Between 1830 and 1860, roughly 3,000 mountain men survived brutal Rocky Mountain winters that killed 1 in 5 who attempted it, facing temperatures of 40 below zero, months of isolation, and the constant threat of starvation. Their cabins were tiny fortresses against a world determined to freeze them solid, and their only weapons were foresight, iron will, and a deep understanding of a landscape that wanted them dead. Here's what it was really like to survive a frozen winter in the heart of the Rockies. If these stories help you sleep, a like or subscribe would mean a lot. Also, drop where you're listening from and what time it is there. I check the comments and it's wild seeing people from Norway and Australia on the same video. So we're going back to the Rocky Mountains in the 1830s tonight. But first though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second. Adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. Your eyes snap open. The cold hits you first, not the gentle chill of a forgotten blanket, but the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache when you breathe, the kind that turns your breath into a cloud so thick you could almost grab it. This isn't your warm bedroom. This is a cabin in the Rocky Mountains, September 1837, and you're Gabriel Blackwood, 28 years old, former factory worker from Pennsylvania who headed west 3 years ago chasing beaver pelts and freedom. The morning light filters weakly through oiled paper covering a small window. It's barely dawn, but you're already behind. You've been in these mountains long enough to read the signs, and everything is screaming that winter is coming early this year. Maybe the thickest fur on the marmots, maybe the early migration of birds, or maybe just the bite in the air that wasn't there a week ago. Well, shit, you mutter, sitting up on your pine bough mattress. Your back aches from yesterday's work, but there's no time to baby it, not with maybe 3 weeks before the first real snow. Another day of not dying. Let's get to it. The rough-hewn log walls of your cabin are sturdy enough, but they won't mean a damn thing without preparation. You've seen what happens to men who don't respect the mountains in winter. You found Johnson last spring, frozen solid in his cabin, woodpile exhausted, body huddled around a cold hearth. You pull on buckskin pants, a wool shirt that hasn't been washed since, honestly, you can't remember. Your moccasins are wearing thin across the soles, another thing to fix before snow flies. The fireplace holds just embers now. You kneel, adding kindling carefully, blowing gently until flames catch. The heat feels miraculous against your stiff fingers. Your stomach growls, but breakfast will have to wait. Daylight is too precious to waste. Outside, the morning air stings your face. The small clearing around your cabin is littered with projects half finished. A woodpile that needs to be tripled, meat drying racks that need to be filled, chinking between logs that needs repair. You grab your axe, testing the edge with your thumb. Not gonna sharpen itself, you mutter, reaching for your whetstone. You're talking to yourself more these days. Not a great sign. Old Jenkins went crazy in his 3rd winter alone, started having conversations with his cooking pot. By spring, he couldn't string together a sentence that made sense. At least I know I'm talking to myself, you say, with a grim smile, working the stone against the axe edge. That's probably a good sign, probably. Now let me take you through a day in late September as Gabriel races against the coming freeze. Imagine standing in a forest of lodgepole pines, each one stretching maybe 80 feet up. Your axe swings in a rhythm now, the steel biting into dead-standing timber with a satisfying chunk. Your back screams at you to stop, but your brain does the math. Every log means another day of survival when the temperature drops to 40 below. 20 days of solid chopping, you wheeze between swings. That's what it takes. 20 days of wood cutting to maybe not freeze to death over 5 months. The the pile of logs grows. For every tree you fell, you need to limb it, cut it into manageable lengths, split the bigger pieces, then haul it all back to the cabin. It's the hauling that's killing your back. By midday, your shirt is soaked with sweat despite the cool air, and your hands are forming blisters on top of calluses. You pause, leaning on your axe handle, looking up at the sky. Blue, painfully clear. Mountains like this don't ease you into winter with gentle warnings. They flip a switch. One day it's autumn, the next you're buried in snow, and you're not ready, not even close. The thought of Johnson's frozen corpse drives you back to work. By late afternoon, you've added maybe 2 days' worth of wood to your pile. Not enough, not nearly enough. But your body is done, and there's other work waiting. See, that's the thing about winter preparation. It's not just one task, it's 50 crucial tasks, any one of which, left undone, could kill you. You check your meat situation, 3 rabbits cleaned and drying on racks, a quarter of an elk, the rest traded to a ute hunter for salt and a new knife. Some dried berries gathered over summer, maybe enough for a month, if you stretch it. Gotta hunt, you tell a curious squirrel watching from a nearby pine. Don't suppose you'd volunteer as dinner. The squirrel flicks its tail in what seems like deliberate mockery. Your stomach reminds you that you still haven't eaten today. Back at the cabin, you force yourself to take only a small piece of jerky and a handful of dried service berries. The winter ahead demands discipline. As you chew the tough jerky, you check the cabin with a critical eye. The chinking between the logs, a mixture of mud, moss and grass that keeps the wind out, has crumbled in spots. You'll need to repair it before snow flies. The roof seems solid, a mixture of layered bark strips and pine boughs. You spent all of July getting it right, knowing your life would depend on it. The real problem is the door. It doesn't fit tight, and in January, when the wind howls, that gap might as well be a canyon letting all your precious heat escape. One problem at a time, you remind yourself, reaching for your old hammer and some wood scraps. Wait, let me paint you a picture of what's at stake here. In the depths of winter, when the temperature plunges to 40 below, the cold doesn't just hurt, it transforms the world. At that temperature, your spit freezes before it hits the ground. Metal becomes so cold it can tear the skin off your fingers if you touch it barehanded. Your breath freezes in your beard or on your eyelashes, creating ice crystals that can actually freeze your eyes shut if you're not careful. And it's not just the cold, it's the isolation, the knowledge that the nearest settlement is 70 miles away across mountain terrain. If you break your leg, you die. If you run out of food, you die. If your fire goes out in February and you can't restart it, you'll be frozen solid by morning. All right, door first, then more wood tomorrow, you decide, measuring the gap with your fingers. As sunset approaches, you've improved the door fit with some careful planing and added strips of buckskin around the edges to better seal it. Your back is a solid mass of pain, your hands raw despite their calluses. Inside, you build up the fire against the evening chill and finally allow yourself a proper meal. Elk meat sliced thin and fried in its own fat with the last of some wild onions you gathered weeks ago. The grease on your fingers feels like a luxury. The fire throws your shadow against the cabin wall as night falls. This is when the doubts creep in, when you question if you made the right choice coming out here alone. 3 years ago, you left a job at a Philadelphia factory, tired of the foreman's shouting, the endless hours, the grimy air. Out here you're free, no one to answer to, but freedom has sharp teeth. Stop it, you tell yourself, poking at the fire. Plenty of men survive the winters. If idiots like Carson and Jenkins can do it, so can you. Here's what most people don't understand about surviving in the mountains. It's not just the big things like shelter and food that keep you alive. It's 1,000 small skills. Like knowing that pine sap mixed with beeswax and animal fat makes a waterproofing agent for your boots, or that hanging a rabbit skin on your cabin wall helps insulate against drafts, or that sleeping with your powder horn and ammunition inside your bedroll keeps them dry and functional. As darkness settles completely, you make a careful check of your supplies. Ammunition is good, about 40 lead balls for your rifle, enough powder for maybe 50 shots. Your knife needs sharpening. Salt is running low. Your fish hooks and lines seem in good order. The checklist in your head never stops. Each item translates directly to survival or death. Outside, an owl hoots, and somewhere much farther, a wolf howls. The mountains are getting ready for winter too in their own way. You bank the fire carefully for the night, making sure the embers will last until morning. The thought of waking to a cold hearth and having to restart it from scratch is enough to keep you double-checking your work. Finally, exhausted, you lie back on your pine bough mattress, pulling deer hides and your one precious wool blanket over you. Despite the aches in your muscles and the endless worry about winter, there's a strange peace here. Above the cabin, through the small smoke hole in the roof, you can see stars more brilliant than any city dweller could imagine. For a moment, the beauty almost makes the danger worthwhile. Almost. You wake before dawn, not to an alarm clock, but to the knowledge that every daylight hour is precious. The morning ritual repeats. Fire, minimal breakfast, mental calculation of tasks against time. Today, hunting takes priority. Your rifle is a .50 caliber Hawken, a serious weapon for serious work. Not a gun for sport, but for filling your cookpot. You check it carefully, wiping it down with an oiled rag before heading out. The forest feels different in autumn, quieter, as if the animals know what's coming and are making their own preparations. I just need one deer, you whisper to yourself. Just one good-sized buck to get me through till December. Hunting isn't like most people imagine. It's not about stealth and quick reflexes, though those help. It's about patience, understanding the patterns of animals, knowing where they feed, where they water, how they move through the terrain. You settle into a spot overlooking a small meadow where you've seen deer browsing before, and you wait. Hours pass, the sun climbs, your legs cramp, you ignore it. Finally, movement at the meadow's edge, a young buck, maybe a 2-pointer. Not ideal, but better than nothing. You raise your rifle slowly, controlling your breathing the way your father taught you. The rifle's report echoes through the mountains, startling birds into flight. The buck drops. Clean shot. Thank you, you murmur, an instinctive gratitude to both the animal and whatever forces might be listening. The real work begins now. Field dressing the animal, a messy, bloody business that has to be done quickly and correctly. Then the hard part, hauling maybe 80 pounds of meat and usable hide back to your cabin. It's nearly dusk by the time you return, sweating despite the chill, arms burning from the effort, but it was worth it. This meat, properly dried and stored, might be the difference between life and death in February. You hang the meat to cool overnight, planning to start the smoking process tomorrow. Nothing can be wasted. The hide will be scraped and tanned, the sinew saved for sewing material, the bones boiled for marrow and then carved into tools, the hooves rendered for glue. As darkness falls again, you allow yourself a small celebration. The last of the coffee you traded for back in April, boiled in a battered tin cup over the fire. It's a luxury, and you savour each bitter sip. Good day's work, you tell the empty cabin. Maybe I won't die this winter after all. But even as you say it, you know it's too early for confidence. You've heard the stories, men who thought they were prepared, men found huddled around cold fireplaces, their wood gone, their food exhausted, their bodies frozen. The mountains don't reward optimism. They reward respect and preparation. The next morning brings another surprise. Frost coating the meadow grass. Earlier than last year. The mountains are giving you a warning. Message received, you mutter, pulling your wool cap lower. I'm hurrying as fast as I can. Today's job, starting the meat smoking process and continuing the never-ending wood gathering. You've built a small smokehouse, really just a teepee of branches covered with hides, with a small fire pit in the centre. The trick is to keep the fire smouldering, not burning, creating the cool smoke that will preserve the meat. By midday, thin strips of venison hang from branches inside the smokehouse, and the sweet smell of smoke mixes with the scent of raw meat. You check the fire hourly, adding green wood to create more smoke when needed. Between checks, you're back to the endless wood cutting. Each log split and stacked feels like a small victory against the coming freeze. Late in the day, you spot something that makes your heart race. A grisly track, fresh in the mud near the stream where you collect water. Not just any grizzly either. The pad width measures nearly 6 inches across. A big male, probably 600 pounds or more. Wonderful, you whisper, scanning the forest edge nervously. Just what I needed. Bears are entering hyperphagia now, the period before hibernation when they eat constantly to build fat reserves. A smoking meat cache might as well be a dinner invitation. That night you clean your rifle with extra care and keep it loaded beside your bed. Sleep comes fitfully interrupted by every crack of branches or whisper of wind. Morning brings no new bear signs, but your neck aches from tension. Still, the work doesn't stop. It never stops. Today's focus, chinking the cabin. You gather moss from the north sides of trees, mix it with mud from the stream bank, and work it into the gaps between logs. It's tedious, painstaking work, but when January winds hit, you'll be grateful for every filled crack. As you work, you talk to yourself, telling stories from your childhood in Pennsylvania, reciting half-remembered poems, anything to fill the silence. My mother would laugh herself silly if she could see me now, you say, packing moss into a particularly wide gap. She always said I was too soft for hard work. The irony isn't lost on you. Here you are, former factory worker, now living a life that makes factory labour look easy by comparison. By sunset, you've finished maybe half the cabin's exterior. Your hands are raw from the rough wood and cold mud, but the improvement is already noticeable, less breeze finding its way inside. That night, you dream of Philadelphia, of crowded streets and shop windows, of conversations that aren't with yourself. You wake feeling oddly homesick for a life you chose to leave, but there's no time for nostalgia. The calendar in your head keeps ticking. Winter is coming, and you're in a race you can't afford to lose. The next few days blur together in an endless cycle of wood cutting, meat smoking, cabin repairs. Your body adapts, finding reserves of strength you didn't know you had. A week passes, then another. October arrives with the first snow flurry, just a brief squall that dusts the ground and melts by noon. But it's another warning. Your woodpile has grown impressive, a stack nearly as tall as you and twice as long as your cabin. Still not enough, but better. The deer meat is fully smoked now, stored carefully inside the cabin along with your other food reserves. You've been lucky enough to add 3 rabbits and a wild turkey to your stores. Might actually make it, you allow yourself to think one evening, looking over your work of the past weeks. The cabin is tighter, the woodpile substantial, the food cache respectable. That night you sleep deeply for the first time in weeks, the exhaustion of constant labour finally catching up. You wake to silence, the kind of muffled quiet that only comes with heavy snow. Opening your cabin door reveals a transformed world. 6 inches of snow cover everything, with more falling. The real storm has arrived earlier than anyone could have predicted. For a moment, panic rises in your throat. Are you ready? Have you done enough? But then you take a breath. This is what you prepared for. This is what all the labor was building toward. You close the door against the snow and build up your fire. Outside, winter has arrived in the high country. The real test is just beginning, and as the snow continues to fall, transforming the mountains into a white wilderness, you can't help but smile at the challenge ahead. "All right, then," you whisper to the flames. "Let's see what you've got." The snow doesn't stop for 3 days. When it finally ends, Gabriel steps outside to a world transformed. The familiar landscape has vanished under nearly 2 feet of white. His woodpile, thankfully covered with pine boughs, stands as a dark island in a sea of white. The sky above is a blue so intense it almost hurts to look at it. "Well," he says, his breath clouding around his face, "guess autumn's officially cancelled." The temperature has plummeted. Even with the sun shining brilliantly, it can't be more than 10 degrees, the kind of cold that makes your nose hairs freeze when you inhale. Gabriel trudges through the snow to check his meat storage. Everything looks secure. He breaks the thin layer of ice in his water bucket with his fist. Water will be a constant problem now. The stream is already freezing over, and soon he'll be melting snow for every drop. Back inside, the cabin feels almost warm compared to the biting cold outside. The contrast makes Gabriel suddenly appreciate his weeks of labor. The chinking job he'd done, while not perfect, has sealed most of the gaps. The pile of firewood, while still not as large as he'd like, represents hundreds of hours of sweat and strain. "Could have been caught with my pants down," he mutters, glancing at the snow visible through the small window. Like Anderson last year. Anderson had been found when the spring thaw came, his body curled around his last stick of firewood, frozen solid for probably 2 months by the time anyone found him. He'd underestimated the winter, thought he could get by with less preparation. The mountains had proven him wrong. Gabriel shivers, but not from cold. There's something deeply unsettling about knowing the exact shape your death might take. "Not me," he says firmly. "Not this year anyway." With the first major snowfall, life changes completely. Where before every waking moment was focused on preparation, now existence centers entirely around one thing: the fire. The small stone fireplace becomes the absolute heart of Gabriel's world. Every 4 hours, day and night, he needs to add more wood. Banking the coals just right before sleeping becomes an art form. Too much wood, and he might burn through his supply too quickly. Too little, and he could wake to a dead hearth and temperatures inside the cabin dropping to lethal levels. Today, 1 week into winter's grip, Gabriel has established a routine. He wakes before dawn, the cold having penetrated his blankets enough to pull him from sleep. The cabin interior is frosted, his breath visible, the water in his bucket crusted with ice. The fire has died down to coals overnight. He kneels before it, his joints stiff, adding kindling with careful, practiced movements. Thin pieces first, arranged just so, then progressively larger splits as the flames take hold. "There you go," he whispers, as if encouraging a child taking its first steps. That's it. The flames catch, and relief washes through him. Each morning, that first fire lighting feels like a small victory against the wilderness. Once the fire is established, Gabriel melts snow for water. The process is tediously slow. A small iron pot hangs on a hook over the flames, and it takes nearly an hour to get enough water for drinking and basic washing. Breakfast is a sliver of smoked venison and a handful of dried berries. He eats slowly, making each bite last. Food is no longer just sustenance. It's a calendar marking how long he might survive. "Gotta be smart about this," he tells himself, carefully wrapping the remaining venison in a cloth. February Gabriel will thank October Gabriel for not being a greedy bastard. After eating, Gabriel checks his traps. He sets several within shouting distance of the cabin, not far enough to risk getting lost in a sudden squall, but far enough that rabbits or grouse might blunder into them. Today, like the past 3 days, they're empty. Typical, he mutters, kicking at the snow. Animals get scarce right when you need 'em most. Back in the cabin, he turns to the day's real work, making repairs to equipment that would be impossible to replace until spring. His moccasins are laid out on his small table. The left one has a seam that's started to give way. With sinew thread and a bone needle, he stitches it closed, his large hands working with surprising delicacy. Ma would be shocked, he chuckles to himself. Never could get me to help with mending back home. Memories flood in as he works. His mother at her sewing table, his sisters giggling over some private joke, his father's rumbling voice from the next room. For a moment, the isolation feels crushing. Gabriel shakes his head, pushing the thoughts away. Homesickness is a luxury he can't afford. Not now, not here. As he works, he talks to himself, a habit that's become more pronounced with each passing day of isolation. Should check the snowshoes next. Webbing's looking worn on the right one, and the fishing line needs new hooks. If the ice gets thick enough on the lake, might try ice fishing in a couple weeks. His voice, bouncing back from the log walls, is the only human sound for 50 miles in any direction. By midday, the fire needs substantial feeding. Gabriel selects logs carefully from his stack, mentally calculating how long his supply might last if the winter stretches into April or even May, as it sometimes does at this elevation. The wood makes a satisfying chunk as he drops it onto the coals. Sparks swirl up the chimney. "You know," he says to the flames, "back in Philadelphia, I paid a landlord $15 a month for a room with a fireplace that smoked constantly. Here I am, building my own fires in my own cabin, and I don't owe a damn penny to anyone." That thought sustains him as he turns to his next task, cataloguing his food supplies. It's a grim accounting. Despite his preparations, the math is unforgiving. If he's careful, very careful, he has enough to last until late March. But if winter holds past that, Gabriel shakes his head. "Cross that bridge when we come to it," he mutters. By mid-afternoon, cabin fever starts to set in. The walls, initially a welcome shelter from the cold, begin to feel like a prison. The silence, normally peaceful, takes on a suffocating quality. Need to get outside, even if it's just for a minute, Gabriel decides. He bundles up in layers. Wool, shirt, buckskin jacket. His one pair of mittens, the fur cap he made from a fox pelt last winter. The preparation to go outside takes nearly 15 minutes. The cold hits him like a slap when he opens the door. It must be below zero now, the sun already sinking, though it's barely 3 in the afternoon. Winter days are brutally short this high in the mountains. Gabriel forces himself to walk a circuit around the cabin, checking for any damage from the snow. The roof is holding well, though icicles like daggers hang from the eaves. He knocks them down methodically. One falling on someone's head could cause a serious injury. And up here, there's no doctor to stitch you up. "Not bad," he says, surveying his small domain. "Could be worse." As he's about to go back inside, movement catches his eye. About 50 yards away, near the edge of the clearing, a young mule deer is pouring through the snow, looking for anything edible beneath. Gabriel freezes. Fresh meat would be an incredible windfall. Slowly, painfully slowly, he backs toward the cabin door. His rifle is just inside. If he moves fast enough, the deer raises its head, ears twitching. It's now or never. Gabriel lunges for the door, grabs the rifle, and is back outside in seconds. The deer is bounding away, but not at full speed. The deep snow is hampering its escape. He raises the rifle, tracking the animal's movement, and fires. The shot cracks across the clearing like a whip. The deer stumbles, then falls. "Yes," Gabriel shouts, the sound strange in the winter silence. "Thank you." He trudges through the snow toward his prize, already calculating how much meat he's just added to his stores. It's not a large deer, but it might be the difference between life and death come March. Field dressing a deer in sub-zero temperatures is a miserable business. His hands quickly go numb despite his mittens. Blood steams in the cold air, then freezes almost instantly on the snow. Gabriel works as fast as he can, knowing that both the meat and his own extremities are at risk of freezing. By the time he drags the carcass back to the cabin, the sun is setting. His fingers are worryingly stiff, and it takes several painful minutes by the fire before feeling returns, bringing with it the burning ache of cold, damaged skin. Stupid, he scolds himself. Should have worn the rabbit fur liners, could have lost fingers. But the pain seems a small price for the bounty. The deer carcass, now hanging from his cabin's rafters, represents security. With careful rationing, this might push his supplies into April. As night falls fully, Gabriel allows himself a slightly larger dinner than usual to celebrate. A few extra strips of jerky and even a small handful of the precious dried apples he'd traded for last summer. The fire crackles cheerfully, and for the first time since the snow began, Gabriel feels something like optimism. That night he sleeps deeply, without the nagging anxiety that's become his constant companion. He's awakened suddenly by a sound, a scraping, scratching noise from the cabin roof. Gabriel lies perfectly still, ears straining. There it is again, something moving above him. His rifle is propped against the wall beside his bed. He reaches for it silently, heart pounding. Bears should be hibernating by now, but not all go down for winter at the same time, and a hungry grizzly looking for one last meal before sleeping would find the scent of fresh deer meat irresistible. The scratching continues. It doesn't sound heavy enough for a bear, maybe a marten or a wolverine drawn by the deer scent. Whatever it is, Gabriel can't risk damage to his roof or loss of the deer meat. He slips from beneath his blankets, the cold air hitting him like a wave, and moves cautiously toward the cabin door, rifle ready. Outside, the night is crystal clear, stars blazing against the black sky. The temperature must be 20 below zero. His breath freezes instantly in his beard as he scans the cabin roof. There, a dark shape against the snow. Not a bear, thank God. A wolverine, stocky and powerful, clawing at the chimney area where the smoke carries the scent of meat. Gabriel raises his rifle. Wolverines are known to be ferocious, capable of driving off animals many times their size. Best not to take chances. The shot cracks through the night. The wolverine tumbles from the roof into the snow. "Sorry, friend," Gabriel says, approaching the fallen animal cautiously. "Can't share my supplies." An unexpected bonus. Wolverine fur is excellent, dense and frost-resistant. The pelt will make a good addition to his winter gear, but standing outside in nothing but his wool shirt and pants, Gabriel is already shaking violently from the cold. He grabs the wolverine by its thick tail and drags it toward the cabin door. Inside, it takes nearly half an hour huddled by the fire before his body stops shaking. The experience is a sharp reminder of how quickly the winter cold can kill. Or note to self, he mutters through chattering teeth. Don't go outside half-dressed, idiot. The wolverine carcass lies near the door. In the morning, he'll skin it and stretch the hide. Nothing goes to waste up here. As Gabriel finally warms enough to return to bed, he realizes he's facing another challenge. His firewood is disappearing faster than he'd calculated, between needing to keep the cabin extra warm for processing the deer meat and the temperature dropping lower than he'd anticipated. He's burning through his supply at an alarming rate. "Damn it," he whispers, looking at the diminished pile. If the winter is as long as last year's, he might run out by early March. Sleep comes fitfully now, worry gnawing at his mind. Morning brings another challenge. While skinning the wolverine, the knife slips on the frozen hide and Gabriel gashes his left hand between thumb and forefinger. "Son of a bitch," he hisses, dropping the knife and clutching his hand. Blood wells immediately, dripping onto the cabin floor. Injury in the wilderness is always serious, but winter injuries can be fatal. Infection without medicine, incapacitation without help nearby. Either could be a death sentence. Gabriel packs snow against the wound to slow the bleeding, then rummages one-handed through his small collection of medical supplies. He has some whiskey, traded for at enormous cost specifically for wound cleaning, and a few scraps of relatively clean cloth for bandaging. Gritting his teeth, he pours whiskey over the cut. The pain is immediate and blinding. He swears steadily for nearly a minute, using words that would have earned him a mouthful of soap back home. All right, he gasps when the initial agony subsides. Not too deep, probably won't need stitches. He wraps the hand tightly with cloth strips, trying to keep it clean, but he knows the real problem is just beginning. With his left hand injured, every task becomes twice as difficult, and he can't afford to rest. The deer meat needs to be cut into strips for smoking and drying. The wolverine pelt needs scraping and stretching. Wood needs to be brought in. Snow needs to be melted for water, and all of it must be done with essentially one good hand. No choice, Gabriel tells himself firmly. Just slower, that's all. The day passes in a blur of pain and awkward, one-handed labour. By sunset, Gabriel is exhausted, his bandage soaked through with blood and his right arm aching from doing the work of two. He changes the bandage, noting with relief that the bleeding has slowed and the wound's edges look clean. No sign of infection yet. He can only hope it stays that way. That night, the temperature drops even further. The walls of the cabin crack and pop with cold. Despite the fire, frost forms on the inside walls, and Gabriel's water bucket freezes solid. He wakes every few hours to feed the fire, each time finding the cabin colder than before. By dawn, it's clear this is no ordinary cold snap. This is the kind of killing cold the old-timers warned him about. Outside, the thermometer he'd traded for in St. Louis reads 38 degrees below zero, and that's not counting wind chill. Christ, he whispers, staring at the mercury. At this temperature, exposed skin can freeze in under a minute. If the fire were to go out... Gabriel looks at his woodpile with new anxiety. He'd thought he had enough. Now he's not so sure. One day at a time, he reminds himself. Get through today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. But as he turns to go back inside, a sound stops him. A long, low howl from the forest edge, then another, closer. Wolves. They've scented the deer meat, and in weather this cold, with game scarce, they'll be desperate. Gabriel hurries back into the cabin, making sure the door is securely latched. His injured hand throbs as he reaches for his rifle, checking that it's loaded. Through the small window, he catches glimpses of grey shapes moving at the forest edge. 4 wolves. Normally they'd avoid a human dwelling, but hunger changes the usual rules. Just perfect, Gabriel mutters, watching as one of the wolves trots boldly into the clearing. As if I didn't have enough problems. The wolf stops, nose raised, testing the air. It's a big male, lean and powerful even in the depths of winter. It stares directly at the cabin with unsettling intelligence. Gabriel raises his rifle, using his injured hand to steady it despite the pain. He takes aim through the window. The wolf turns suddenly, as if sensing the threat, and lopes back toward the trees. Gabriel lowers the rifle, exhaling slowly. The wolves haven't left. He can still see shapes moving among the trees, but they're keeping their distance for now. They'll be back, he says grimly, and I can't waste ammunition. This new threat changes his calculations yet again. He'll need to be even more careful about going outside, especially around dawn and dusk when wolves are most active, and he'll need to secure the deer meat better, maybe build a small meat cache up in a tree where the wolves can't reach it. All with an injured hand, dwindling firewood, and temperatures cold enough to kill. Gabriel sits heavily on his single chair, suddenly overwhelmed. There are moments, even for the most experienced mountain men, when the sheer magnitude of the challenge seems too much. This is one of those moments. One problem at a time, he says finally, his voice sounding thin in the cold cabin. Just take it one problem at a time. He stands, wincing as his injured hand throbs and moves to the fire. First things first, keep warm, then deal with the meat, then figure out the wolves, then worry about firewood, one problem at a time. It's the only way to survive. As he stacks wood on the fire, Gabriel can't help but laugh darkly at his situation. And to think I left Philadelphia because factory work was too demanding, he says to the flames. Bet that foreman isn't worried about wolves eating him right now. Outside, the sun glints blindingly off the snow, and somewhere in the trees, the wolves wait. Winter in the high country has only just begun, 3 weeks into full winter now, and Gabriel's world has contracted to the most basic elements of survival. Each day follows the same vital pattern. Tend, fire, melt snow for water, eat sparingly, check for threats, maintain equipment, and try not to think too much about how many winter days still lie ahead. His injured hand is healing, though the cold makes the process painfully slow. The wolves have become a regular presence, appearing at dawn and dusk to test his defences. So far, they've kept their distance, but Gabriel knows hunger will eventually make them bolder. Today dawns brutally cold again, the thermometer showing 26 below zero. Gabriel's beard, now full and untrimmed, freezes solid with his first breath outside. He's checking his small meat cache, built on a platform 10 feet up a pine tree near the cabin. High enough to keep it from wolves, but close enough that he doesn't risk getting lost in a sudden squall. The meat is secure, freezing solid in the intense cold. Gabriel nods with satisfaction. At least something is going right. As he turns to head back to the cabin, movement catches his eye at the forest edge. Not a wolf this time, a man on snowshoes, moving slowly through the deep snow. Gabriel stares in disbelief. Another human being, after weeks of solitude, seems almost like a hallucination. He raises his arm in greeting, his heart suddenly racing with the simple joy of seeing another person. The figure waves back and alters course toward the cabin. As the stranger gets closer, Gabriel recognizes him. Jim Bridger, one of the most experienced mountain men in the Rockies. They'd met briefly at the summer rendezvous, trading stories over whiskey. Bridger, Gabriel calls, his voice cracking from disuse. "Welcome." Bridger approaches, his face barely visible between a fur hat and a massive beard crusted with ice. He's pulling a small sled loaded with supplies. "Blackwood," Bridger nods in greeting. "Thought that might be your smoke. Glad to see you're still among the living." The simple exchange feels monumental after so much isolation. Gabriel finds himself grinning foolishly. "Come in," he says, gesturing toward the cabin. "Fire's going." Inside, Bridger removes his outer layers, revealing a man in his 40s, weathered by decades in the wilderness. He eyes Gabriel's cabin with the experienced assessment of someone who's survived more winters than most. "Not bad," he says, warming his hands by the fire. "Roof looks solid. Got a good amount of wood, I see." It's high praise from someone like Bridger, and Gabriel feels a rush of pride. "Coffee," Gabriel offers, reaching for his dwindling but precious supply. Bridger's eyes light up. Wouldn't say no to that. As the coffee boils, the two men exchange information, the currency of the wilderness. Bridger is heading south to check his trap lines. He reports that the winter has been unusually harsh all through the mountains. "Found 2 cabins already," he says grimly, accepting a cup of the steaming coffee. Both men froze. One ran out of wood. Other one broke his leg somehow, couldn't tend his fire. Gabriel nods soberly. It's not surprising news, but it reinforces the constant danger. "Wolves been hanging around," he tells Bridger, showing his injured hand, "and had a little accident." Bridger examines the wound with clinical detachment. "Healing clean, though. You'll keep the hand." Such is medicine in the mountains. Binary outcomes. You keep the limb or you don't. They talk for hours, sharing information about game movements, weather patterns, other trappers in the region. For Gabriel, it's like water to a man dying of thirst, human connection after weeks of isolation. When Bridger finally prepares to leave, he reaches into his pack and pulls out a newspaper. "From St. Louis," he says, handing it to Gabriel. "August edition. Already read it 3 times, so you keep it." It's a priceless gift. New words, new ideas, news from the outside world. Gabriel accepts it reverently. "Safe travels," he says, as Bridger heads back into the snow. "See you at spring rendezvous." Bridger nods. They both know it's as much hope as prediction. Winter claims many before spring arrives. As Gabriel watches Bridger disappear into the trees, the wolves howl from somewhere to the north. The brief connection with humanity already feels like a dream. But the newspaper crinkles in his hand, tangible proof that there is still a world beyond these snow-covered mountains, a reminder of why he's fighting so hard to survive. Gabriel turns back to his cabin, already planning how to make the newspaper last, reading just a little each day, saving it like the luxury it is. Behind him, the wolves call again, closer now, always closer. Winter is far from over. The newspaper becomes Gabriel's most treasured possession. Each night, by the flickering light of the fire, he reads just a small section, savouring the words like a fine meal, making them last. The St. Louis Gazette, August 18th, 1837. The pages are already worn from Bridger's readings, but to Gabriel they're as precious as gold. Tonight, he reads about political tensions in Washington, President Van Buren facing criticism over financial policies. In another world, another life, he might have had opinions about this. Now, it's simply a window into a reality that seems impossibly distant. "Wonder if Van Buren's worried about his firewood supply," Gabriel murmurs, glancing at his diminishing pile. Despite his careful rationing, it's disappearing faster than planned. Outside, the wolves howl again. They've grown bolder since Bridger's visit, venturing closer to the cabin each day. This morning, Gabriel found tracks right up to his door, the large male testing his resolve. The newspaper crinkles as he carefully folds it away, saving the next section for tomorrow night. He banks the fire for sleep, arranging the coals and logs with precision born of necessity. His dreams are troubled. Wolves with human eyes, a door that won't latch, fire that won't catch. He wakes several times in the night, adding wood to the flames, checking that the door is secure. Morning brings new snow and fierce wind, a proper mountain blizzard, the kind that can last for days. Gabriel stares out his small window at the swirling white. Visibility is maybe 10 feet. The thermometer reads 17 below zero. Going nowhere today, he tells himself, resigned to another day confined within the cabin's walls. The blizzard howls for 3 days straight, 3 days in which Gabriel doesn't set foot outside, using snow gathered from the doorway for water, rationing his food even more strictly and fighting a growing sense of confinement that borders on panic. By the third day, he's talking constantly to himself just to hear a human voice. Should reinforce the north wall when this breaks, he says, pacing the small cabin. 5 steps this way, 5 steps back. Could use those pine branches I saved, weave them against the wall. 5 steps this way, 5 steps back. Maybe melt some pitch for better waterproofing. 5 steps this way, 5 steps back. He catches himself counting the steps, walking the exact same path over and over, and forces himself to stop. This is how it starts, he mutters, sitting heavily on his bed. This is how Jenkins went crazy. To distract himself, he turns to the newspaper again. He's already read it twice through, but he searches for details he might have missed. An advertisement for a new type of plow. Wedding announcements for people he'll never meet. Shipping news from the Mississippi. One small article catches his eye, a brief mention of a trapper found dead in his cabin up in the Michigan Territory. Suspected cause, cabin fever leading to carelessness, the paper reports clinically. Gabriel snorts. Cabin fever like it's a real disease. But isn't it? The crushing boredom, the isolation, the way the walls seem to inch closer every day. It changes a man, makes him careless, makes him desperate, makes him do things no sane person would consider. The wind finally dies on the morning of the 4th day. Gabriel practically falls through the door in his eagerness to be outside, to feel space around him again. The cold is intense, 20 below at least, but the simple relief of not being confined makes it bearable. The snow has drifted higher than his waist in places. His woodpile is nearly buried, and it takes an hour of digging to uncover enough logs for the day. The labour warms him despite the cold, and for the first time in days, his mind feels clearer. Been spending too much time in my head? He tells a raven watching curiously from a nearby pine. Need to keep busy. The raven croaks in what sounds like agreement. Gabriel checks his meat cache, still secure, though the platform sags under the weight of new snow. Then he inspects the cabin exterior for damage from the blizzard. The roof has held, though icicles thick as his arm hang from every edge. As he rounds the back of the cabin, he freezes. Wolf tracks, fresh since the storm. Lots of them, and something else. Claw marks on the logs near the back window where the scent of his food stores would be strongest. Getting bold, aren't you? He whispers, kneeling to examine the tracks. At least 4 different wolves, including the big male. They'd circled the entire cabin during the storm, looking for weakness. Gabriel straightens, scanning the tree line. Nothing moves, but he feels watched. Inside, he checks his rifle and counts his ammunition again. 15 balls, enough powder for maybe 20 shots. Not enough to waste, but enough to defend himself if necessary. The next day brings clear skies and even colder temperatures. The thermometer shows 30 below zero when Gabriel checks it at dawn. Too cold to do much outside, but after 4 days mostly confined indoors, he can't bear another day inside. He layers carefully 2 pairs of wool socks, buckskin pants, wool shirt, buckskin jacket, his mittens now lined with rabbit fur, and his fox fur cap pulled low. Even so, when he steps outside, the cold steals his breath. His injured hand, still not fully healed, aches immediately. Gabriel ignores it. He needs firewood, and he needs to check his trap line. The few traps he's kept within sight of the cabin might mean extra meat. The snow is crusted hard enough to walk on top in some places, but unpredictably gives way in others. Even with his snowshoes, travel is exhausting. By the time Gabriel reaches his first trap, he's sweating beneath his layers, a dangerous condition. Sweat can freeze against the skin, causing frostbite, or worse, the trap is empty, so is the second. The third holds a surprise, a small red fox frozen solid in the killing jaws. "Well, hello, beautiful," Gabriel says, admiring the thick winter coat. "The meat will be tough and gamey, but edible, and the fur will make excellent mittens or a collar." As he bends to retrieve the fox, a sound makes him straighten, the crack of a branch in the forest to his right. The wolf stands 30 yards away, the big male, watching him with calculating yellow eyes. It's thin but powerful, white breath pluming from its nostrils. Gabriel slowly reaches for his rifle, not taking his eyes off the wolf. His mittened hands feel clumsy on the trigger. Another crack to his left this time. A second wolf appears, smaller, perhaps a young female. Then movement behind him. They've surrounded him. For a long moment, no one moves. Man or wolves. Then the big male takes a step forward, testing. Gabriel fires. The shot cracks across the clearing, startling ravens from nearby trees. The male wolf yelps, hit in the shoulder, and retreats into the trees. The others follow quickly, disappearing like smoke. Heart pounding, Gabriel retrieves the fox with shaking hands. The encounter was too close. The wolves are getting desperate, coordinating their efforts now, and he's just used one of his precious bullets. He hurries back to the cabin, checking over his shoulder constantly. The wolves don't reappear, but he feels their presence in the forest around him. Inside, with the door firmly barred, Gabriel leans against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The fox hangs from a roof beam, slowly thawing. "They're getting bolder," he tells the empty cabin, "and hungrier." That night, the wolves howl for hours, not their usual hunting calls, but a strange, keening sound, mourning perhaps for the wounded male, or signalling something Gabriel doesn't understand. He sleeps poorly, waking at each change in the howling. By morning, his nerves are frayed, and his supply of firewood inside the cabin is down to just enough for the day. The thermometer reads 22 below zero, warmer than yesterday, but still dangerous. Gabriel bundles up again and heads for his woodpile, rifle ready. No wolves appear as he digs out more logs and carries armloads back to the cabin. The forest is eerily silent, not even bird calls breaking the stillness. By midday, Gabriel has restocked his indoor wood supply and skinned the fox. The pelt is prime, thick and unmarked. The meat simmers in his small pot, filling the cabin with a gamey smell that turns his stomach slightly. But meat is meat, and he can't afford to be picky. As he works, he realizes he's been in the mountains for nearly 4 years now, and yet there's still so much he doesn't know, still so many ways to die out here. The old mountain man that first showed him trapping, what was his name? Mitchell, had said something that seemed like a joke at the time. The Rockies let you live just long enough to learn all the ways they can kill you. Doesn't seem like a joke anymore. Evening brings another wolf visit. Not an attack, but a message. Gabriel finds it when he steps out to check the thermometer before dark. A freshly killed rabbit placed deliberately on the path to his door. He stares at it, understanding slowly dawning. The wolves have brought him food, a peace offering, a trade, or something more complex. Gabriel has heard stories of wolves and men reaching understandings in the deep wilderness, but he dismissed them as tall tales told around rendezvous campfires. He looks toward the forest edge. Nothing moves, but he knows they're watching. After a moment's thought, Gabriel picks up the rabbit. It's still warm. He walks to the edge of the clearing and places the fox meat, what he hasn't eaten, on a fallen log. A fair trade. We understand each other, he says to the unseen watchers. You stay away from me and my food. I'll stay away from you. Back inside, he bars the door and adds wood to the fire. The rabbit will make a better meal than the fox meat, and he's thankful for it, strange as the gift might be. That night, no wolves howl. The silence is almost more unsettling than their calls had been. December slides into January. Gabriel marks the new year by reading the last section of the newspaper for the 12th time. The days blur together, each one a repetition of the same survival tasks. Tend, fire, melt snow, eat sparingly, repair equipment, maintain shelter. What keeps him sane, he discovers, is creating projects. Today, he's using the fox fur to line his mittens, carefully cutting and stitching by the light of the fire. Yesterday, he carved a new set of buttons from deer antler. Tomorrow, perhaps he'll work on his idea for a better snowshoe binding. The wolves have kept their distance since the strange exchange. Occasionally, Gabriel finds a rabbit or squirrel left near the cabin. Each time, he leaves something in return. Scraps of fat, bones with marrow, once even a carefully drawn picture on birch bark of a wolf rendered in charcoal. He's begun to recognize individuals in the pack. The big male, now recovered from the bullet wound, he calls silver for the frosting of grey on his muzzle. The younger female is Notch for the distinctive mark in her ear. There are 5 wolves in total that he's observed. Never thought I'd be on gift-giving terms with wolves, he tells the fire one evening. Ma would think I've gone completely mad. Maybe he has. The isolation plays tricks on the mind. Sometimes he catches himself having entire conversations with people who aren't there. His father, Bridger, even his former foreman from Philadelphia. January brings the coldest day yet. The thermometer reads 42 below zero when Gabriel checks it at dawn. Too cold for anything but the most essential tasks. Even breathing hurts, the air burning in his lungs. Inside, frost covers everything despite the fire. Water freezes in the bucket within minutes of being melted. The walls crack like gunshots as the intense cold contracts the wood. Gabriel stays in bed most of the day, wrapped in every hide and blanket he owns, emerging only to feed the fire. At these temperatures, letting the fire go out would mean death within hours. He's down to less than a quarter of his original woodpile now. If February and March are as harsh as January, he might not have enough. The thought keeps him awake that night, staring at the ceiling, calculating and recalculating how long his wood might last, how much he can cut on warmer days, how low he can let the fire burn without risking his life. Morning brings no solutions, only the continued intense cold. Gabriel forces himself to eat, though his appetite has diminished in the past weeks. Food is fuel, and his body needs it to generate heat. As he's melting snow for his morning water, he hears it, a new sound. Not wolves, not wind, but a rhythmic crunching. Footsteps in the snow. Gabriel grabs his rifle and moves to the window. A figure approaches through the trees. A man, bent against the cold, pulling a small sled. Not Bridger this time, someone else. Gabriel opens the door, rifle ready but not aimed. "Hello, the cabin," the stranger calls, raising a mittened hand. "Come ahead," Gabriel replies, his voice rough from disuse. The man draws closer, young, maybe 20, with a patchy beard and city clothes not well suited to mountain winter. His face is wind-burned and gaunt. Name's Thomas Reed, he says, stopping a respectful distance from the cabin. From the Mackenzie party, got separated in the last storm, been looking for shelter since. Gabriel assesses the young man quickly. He looks desperate but not dangerous, more like a lost child than a threat. Gabriel Blackwood, he responds finally. Come in before you freeze. Inside, Reed thaws slowly by the fire, his gratitude obvious in every gesture. He's part of a fur trading expedition that got caught by early winter while crossing the mountains. The main party had hunkered down near a river valley, but Reed had been checking trap lines when a blizzard hit. Been wandering for nearly a week, surviving on raw rabbit and melted snow. Thought I was dead for sure, he says, hands wrapped around a cup of hot water. Gabriel can't spare coffee for a stranger. Then I saw your smoke. Gabriel nods, saying little. He's both glad for human company and wary of it. Another mouth means less food, less wood, less chance of surviving until spring. But turning away a man in winter would be a death sentence he's not willing to impose. You can stay 3 days, Gabriel says finally. Rest up, then I'll point you toward your people. Reed's relief is palpable. Thank you. I won't be trouble, I swear. Can help with wood, hunting, whatever you need. Gabriel doubts the city boy will be much help, but he appreciates the offer. We'll see. For now, get warm. That night, the wolves howl again. Their first vocalizations in weeks. Gabriel wonders if they're responding to the newcomer, warning him perhaps. Reed sleeps heavily, exhausted from his ordeal. Gabriel stays awake longer, watching the young man's face in the firelight. There's something unsettling about having another human in his space after so long alone. Morning brings slightly warmer temperatures, only 15 below zero, practically balmy compared to recent days. Gabriel decides it's warm enough to check his traps and maybe do some hunting. Want to come along? He asks Reed. See what you're made of? Reed nods eagerly. Yes, sir, whatever you need. Gabriel lends him an extra pair of mittens and his older fur hat. Stay close. Easy to get lost out here, even on a clear day. They head out, Gabriel breaking trail with Reed following. The younger man struggles with the deep snow, unused to the snowshoes Gabriel has lent him. How long you been out here? Reed asks between laboured breaths. In the mountains? 4 years. This cabin, second winter. All alone? Gabriel nods. Prefer it that way, usually. They check the traps. 2 empty, 1 with a rabbit. Better than nothing. Gabriel shows Reed how to reset them, explaining the fine details that make the difference between success and failure. As they move through the forest, Gabriel notices something. Wolf tracks following them at a distance. Don't worry about them, he tells Reed, who spotted the tracks and looks nervous. They won't bother us, not unless we bother them. You sure? Reed asks, glancing around. Heard wolves get desperate in winter, attack anything. Gabriel shakes his head. We have an understanding, the wolves and me. Reed looks at him strangely, clearly wondering if isolation has affected Gabriel's mind. Maybe it has. They return to the cabin with just the 1 rabbit. Not much of a haul, but Gabriel hadn't really expected more. Game is scarce in deep winter. As they approach the cabin, Gabriel spots something on the path. Another gift from the wolves. A grouse this time, freshly killed. Reed stares in disbelief as Gabriel picks it up. Did the wolves leave that? Gabriel nods. Told you. We have an understanding. That's not natural, Reed mutters, crossing himself quickly. Maybe not back east, Gabriel says with a shrug. Different rules out here. That evening, as they share a meal of rabbit and grouse, the best either has eaten in weeks, Reed tells his story. Son of a Boston merchant, came west seeking adventure and fortune in the fur trade, found mostly hardship and disappointment, now just wants to make it home. alive. "Don't think I'm cut out for this life," he admits, looking around the cabin. "Don't know how you do it. The solitude would drive me mad." Gabriel considers this. "Does sometimes," he says finally. "You adapt." "Or still," Reed says, shaking his head. "Being alone out here, it's not natural. Humans need other humans." Gabriel isn't so sure anymore. After nearly 4 years in the mountains, he finds most human company exhausting. Too many words, too many expectations, too many complications. The wolves, with their simple, honest transactions, make more sense to him now. "Different for everyone," is all he says. That night, Reed's coughing wakes Gabriel twice. The young man's cheeks look flushed in the firelight. By morning, it's clear. Reed is sick. Fever, coughing, complaints of aching joints. The cold and exposure of his days lost in the wilderness have taken their toll. Gabriel helps him sit up, pressing a hand to his forehead. Definitely feverish. "Bad?" Reed asks, his voice hoarse. Gabriel doesn't lie. "Not good. Rest. Drink water. See how it goes." But he knows how these things tend to go in winter, with no medicine beyond willow bark tea for fever and no doctor within 100 miles. If it's just exhaustion and cold, Reed might recover. If it's something worse, lung fever or influenza, his chances are slim. Gabriel makes the willow bark tea and helps Reed drink it. Then he goes outside to think. A sick man in his cabin in the depths of winter, it complicates everything, increases the risk, uses precious resources, and if Reed dies, what then? The wolf he calls Silver appears at the edge of the clearing, watching him with those intelligent yellow eyes. Gabriel stares back, wondering what the wolf would do in his situation. The answer comes easily. A wolf would protect its pack, ensure the survival of the whole over the one. But Gabriel isn't a wolf. Not yet, anyway. He sighs, his breath clouding around his face, and turns back to the cabin. Reed needs help, and Gabriel is the only one who can provide it. For better or worse, they're in this together now. Reed's condition worsens over the next 3 days. His cough deepens, becoming a wet, racking sound that seems to tear at his lungs. The fever rises and falls like the tide, leaving him alternately shivering under every available blanket or throwing them off in feverish confusion. Gabriel does what little he can. Willow bark tea for the fever, onion poultices for the cough, using the last of his precious stored onions, and snow compresses when the fever spikes dangerously high. But mountain medicine has sharp limitations, and Reed's body must largely fight this battle on its own. "How bad?" Reed asks during a lucid moment, his voice barely a whisper. Gabriel, changing the sodden compress on the young man's forehead, hesitates. He's never been one for comforting lies. "Bad enough," he says finally, "but I've seen men come back from worse." It's not entirely true, but not entirely a lie either. Gabriel has indeed seen men survive terrible illnesses in the wilderness, though more often he's seen them die. "If I don't make it," Reed says, his eyes clearer than they've been in days. "There's a girl in Boston, Margaret Thorndyke. Can you get word to her?" Gabriel nods, though they both know it's an empty promise. If Reed dies, his body will remain frozen in the cabin until spring thaw. By then, Gabriel will have his own concerns, if he's even survived the winter himself. "You'll tell her yourself," Gabriel says, "when you're better." Reed closes his eyes. "You're a bad liar, Blackwood." That night, Reed's breathing takes on a troubling rattle. Gabriel sits beside him until dawn, keeping the fire well fed, spooning water between the young man's cracked lips when possible. He's seen this sound before. Mountain men call it the death rattle. Fluid in the lungs, drowning a man from within. Outside, as pale winter light finally breaks, the wolves howl, a long, eerie chorus that raises the hair on Gabriel's neck. It sounds different from their usual calls, almost like mourning. "They know," Reed whispers, startling Gabriel, who thought him unconscious. "The wolves! They can smell death coming." "Save your strength," Gabriel tells him, adjusting the blanket. Wolves don't know anything, but he's not sure he believes that anymore. By midday, Reed slips into unconsciousness, his breathing shallow and irregular. Gabriel checks his own dwindling supplies. The firewood situation is becoming desperate. He's down to perhaps 3 weeks' worth if he's extremely careful, and the winter might last 2 more months. And now he's burning extra to keep the cabin warmer for Reed. The math is inescapable. Hard choices loom ahead. Gabriel bundles up and steps outside, needing space to think. The cold hits him like a physical blow. It must be 30 below again. Too cold for prolonged activity, but he forces himself to make a circuit of the cabin, checking for any new animal signs. Wolf tracks circle the entire clearing, as they do most mornings now. Gabriel has grown used to their presence, even comforted by it in a strange way. At least they're predictable in their intentions, unlike humans. As he rounds the cabin, Gabriel notices something new, a small cairn of stones at the edge of the clearing, just visible above the snow. He approaches cautiously, rifle ready, though it's clearly not an animal threat. The stones are deliberately placed, forming a small monument about 2 feet high. On top rests a freshly killed rabbit. Gabriel stares at it, uncomprehending. The wolves leave food sometimes, yes, but not like this. This is human. A sound behind him makes him spin, rifle raised. A figure stands at the forest edge, not Reed, who's unconscious in the cabin, but a native man, dressed in furs against the cold. For a long moment they simply look at each other across the clearing. Then the native man raises an empty hand in greeting. Gabriel slowly lowers his rifle and returns the gesture. The man approaches, moving with confidence on snowshoes across the deep drifts. As he gets closer, Gabriel notes his features, middle-aged, face weathered by the elements, eyes alert and assessing. Ute, most likely, based on his clothing and the tribal territories Gabriel knows. "You speak English?" Gabriel asks when the man stops a respectful distance away. The man nods. Some. Traded with whites before. His accent is thick but understandable. "I am Kanosh. Gabriel Blackwood." Kanosh gestures toward the cabin. "2 smokes from your fire. 1 is dying." It's not a question, but Gabriel nods confirmation. "Lung fever, I think." Kanosh seems unsurprised. Many whites die in winter here, not prepared. He looks pointedly at Gabriel's dwindling wood pile, partially visible beneath its snow covering. Gabriel bristles slightly at the implied criticism, but can't argue with the truth of it. Been a hard winter. Kanosh makes a small sound that might be agreement. "All winter's hard here. Must prepare more." "I did prepare," Gabriel says defensively. "Had a good woodpile. Just not enough." Kanosh finishes for him. He gestures toward the rabbit on the cairn. "For your fire spirit?" Gabriel's confusion must show on his face, because Kanosh continues. "You feed wolves. Spirits watch. Must feed fire spirit too." The absurdity of the situation strikes Gabriel suddenly. Here he is, in the middle of nowhere, having a theological discussion about fire spirits, while a man dies in his cabin and wolves circle his clearing. "Thank you for the rabbit," he says simply, not knowing what else to add. Kanosh studies him for a moment longer. "You have wolf medicine?" unusual for white man. Wolf medicine. Wolves speak to you, bring gifts. Kanosh points toward the edge of the clearing where Silver, the big male wolf, has appeared, watching them with those intelligent yellow eyes. This not normal. Gabriel follows his gaze. We have an understanding. Kanosh nods, as if this makes perfect sense. The dying one, his spirit calls them. Reed calls the wolves. When spirit prepares to leave body, wolves can hear. They wait. Kanosh says this matter-of-factly, as if explaining that water freezes in cold temperatures. Gabriel shivers, and not from the cold. Can you help him? The sick man? Kanosh considers this. Perhaps have some medicine. Not always work for white men. Anything would help, Gabriel says, realizing how desperate he sounds. Kanosh nods once. We'll return tomorrow. Bring medicine. He glances again at Gabriel's woodpile, and will show where to find standing dead trees nearby. Good for burning. With that, he turns and heads back toward the forest. At the edge of the clearing, he pauses, looking back at Gabriel. The wolves chose you. This means something. You should listen to them. Before Gabriel can ask what the hell that means, Kanosh disappears among the trees, leaving Gabriel alone with the rabbit, the cairn, and more questions than answers. Back inside, Reed's condition has deteriorated further. His breathing is laboured, each inhale a struggle. His face has taken on a grey pallor that Gabriel recognises all too well. Hang on, Gabriel tells him, though Reed is beyond hearing. Help's coming tomorrow. Gabriel doesn't have much faith in native medicine, but at this point anything is better than nothing, and the mention of nearby deadwood is perhaps even more valuable information. Without more fuel, neither of them will survive, sick or healthy. That night, Gabriel dreams of wolves running through moonlit forests. In the dream, he runs with them on all fours, feeling the exhilaration of pack movement, of belonging. He wakes disoriented, half expecting to find his body covered in fur. Reed's breathing has worsened, coming in short, desperate gasps. Gabriel sits beside him again, feeling utterly helpless. Outside, the wolves howl their haunting chorus. Morning brings Kanosh back as promised, this time with a small bundle of items wrapped in hide and a rough sled loaded with wood. Medicine, he says, handing Gabriel the bundle, and wood for today. Will show where to find more after. Gabriel accepts both gratefully. Thank you, I can trade. Kanosh waves this off. No trade. Wolves chose you. As if this explains everything. Inside, Kanosh examines Reed with clinical detachment. He opens his bundle, revealing a collection of dried plants, powders, and small animal parts Gabriel doesn't recognize. Very sick, Kanosh pronounces. Lung filled with water, spirit halfway gone. He begins preparing a mixture, crushing plants with a small stone, adding powders, mixing with water heated over the fire. The resulting liquid is dark and smells strongly of earth and something bitter. Must drink, Kanosh says, lifting Reed's head. All of it. Getting the mixture down Reed's throat is difficult. He gags and coughs, but Kanosh is persistent and surprisingly gentle. When the liquid is gone, he places something on Reed's chest, a small leather pouch containing who knows what. Medicine works inside, Kanosh explains to Gabriel. This works on spirit. Gabriel nods, not believing but unwilling to object to anything that might help. What now? Wait. Kanosh says simply, 1 day, 2 day, live or die. It's brutally straightforward, but Gabriel appreciates the honesty. Out here, there's little room for false hope. Kanosh stays until midday, then indicates it's time to show Gabriel the deadwood location. They head out together, Gabriel following the older man's confident path through the forest. After about half an hour of walking, far enough that Gabriel would have been hesitant to venture alone given the risk of sudden storms, they reach a stand of lightning-struck pines, perfectly seasoned deadwood, some already fallen, some still standing. "Good wood," Kanosh says, striking one trunk with his axe. The dry sound confirms it's perfect for burning. "Enough for many weeks." Gabriel stares at the bounty before him, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. With this wood supply, surviving until spring seems possible again. "I would never have found this on my own," he admits. Kanosh just nods. Whites look, but don't see. They work together to load what they can onto Kanosh's sled, Gabriel learning that the older man has a small camp about 2 hours away where he's wintering with 2 other Ute hunters. "Why are you helping me?" Gabriel asks finally, the question that's been nagging at him since Kanosh appeared. Kanosh pauses in his work. "Told you, wolves chose you." What does that mean? Wolves not give gifts to humans, not normal. Kanosh points at Gabriel. "But they give to you. This means you are connected to this place, to them." He gestures broadly at the mountains around them. "You belong now." Gabriel isn't sure what to make of this mystical explanation, but he nods anyway. "Thank you." By the time they return to the cabin, dragging the laden sled between them, the short winter day is already fading. Reed's condition appears unchanged, still unconscious, still breathing those terrible shallow breaths. "We'll return tomorrow," Kanosh says, declining Gabriel's offer to stay the night. "Bring more medicine if needed." After Kanosh leaves, Gabriel stacks the new wood carefully inside the cabin, allowing himself to burn a bit more than usual given the renewed supply. The extra warmth feels like an incredible luxury after weeks of shivering. Reed stirs slightly as evening sets in, his eyes opening briefly, unfocused. "Margaret?" he whispers. "It's Gabriel," he corrects gently. "Rest." Reed's eyes close again. "Cold," he murmurs. "So cold." Gabriel adds another log to the fire and adjusts Reed's blankets. Nothing to do now but wait, as Kanosh said. That night the wolves don't howl. The silence feels significant somehow, though Gabriel couldn't say why. He sleeps in short bursts, checking on Reed frequently. Toward dawn, he notices a change. Reed's breathing seems slightly easier, less laboured. The grey pallor has receded somewhat from his face. When Kanosh returns mid-morning, he examines Reed with the same clinical detachment as before. "Better," he pronounces. "Spirit decided to stay." Gabriel looks at Reed's sleeping form sceptically. "You're sure? Will live. Be weak many days, maybe weeks." Kanosh begins preparing another mixture from his bundle of medicines. This will help strength return. As Kanosh works, Gabriel studies him curiously. "How did you know to come here, to my cabin?" Kanosh continues mixing without looking up. "Wolves told me." Gabriel waits for more explanation, but none comes. Finally, he presses, "The wolves spoke to you?" Now Kanosh looks up, something like amusement in his eyes. "Not with words, with signs." He gestures towards the forest. "Wolf tracks leading here. Wolf behaviour changing. I followed. Found you." It's both a perfectly rational explanation and somehow deeply unsettling. The idea that the wolves' behaviour would attract attention, that they were somehow marking his cabin as significant. "Why would they do that?" Gabriel asks. "The wolves? Why mark my cabin?" Kanosh shrugs slightly. "Maybe you help them once. Maybe they see something in you. Wolves have reasons not always clear to men." He hands the new mixture to Gabriel. "Give this when he wakes, twice each day." Over the next few days, Reed improves steadily. The terrible rattling breath eases, the fever breaks completely, and he begins to take liquid and then soft food. He's weak as a newborn calf, unable to stand without help, but definitely recovering. Kanosh visits every other day, bringing medicine and sometimes small gifts, a few strips of dried meat, a handful of preserved berries. He never stays long, and Gabriel never quite gets a straight answer about the wolves or why Kanosh continues to help them. Reed, as he regains strength, is full of questions. "Who is he?" he asks after Kanosh departs one day. "Why is he helping us?" Gabriel, stoking the fire, shrugs. Name's Kanosh, Ute Hunter. As for why, he relates the strange explanation about wolf medicine and being chosen. Reed listens with wide eyes. "You think that's true? About the wolves choosing you?" Gabriel pokes at the fire, watching sparks rise. "Don't know. They do leave food sometimes. Never heard of that happening before." "Maybe you did something," Reed suggests. "Saved one of them without realizing." Gabriel shakes his head. "Only interaction before this winter was taking shots at them when they got too close to my camp." "Huh?" Reed seems to digest this. "Weird." "Yep." As January crawls toward February, life settles into a new routine. Gabriel makes regular trips to the Deadwood stand, building his supply back to comfortable levels. Reed gains strength slowly, eventually able to move around the cabin and even help with small tasks. The wolves maintain their distance but remain a presence. Gabriel finds their gifts every few days, a rabbit, a grouse, once even a young mule deer dragged to the edge of the clearing, its throat torn out. He continues to leave offerings in return, scraps mostly, but sometimes small objects he's carved or made. One clear, breathtakingly cold night, the stars brittle and sharp in the black sky, Gabriel hears the wolves howling with unusual intensity. He steps outside to listen, the temperature so low his breath freezes in his beard almost instantly. The howls have a different quality tonight, excited, almost jubilant. Reed appears at the door behind him, wrapped in a blanket. "What is it?" he asks, his voice still weak but stronger than before. "Don't know," Gabriel admits. "Something's different." They both watch the forest edge, where shadows seem to move between the trees. Then Silver steps into the moonlight, followed by the others. Notch, with her marked ear, a large female Gabriel calls Shadow, and two younger wolves he hasn't named. The pack stands at the forest edge, watching the cabin. Silver throws his head back and howls once more, a long, clear call that seems to hang in the frozen air. "Jesus," Reed whispers. "It's like they're talking to you." Gabriel has the same strange feeling. Maybe they are. As if in response, Silver steps forward into the clearing, coming closer to the cabin than ever before. In the moonlight, Gabriel can see every detail, the thick winter coat, the intelligent eyes, the lean strength, still evident despite the harsh season. Silver stops about 20 yards away. For a long moment, wolf and man simply look at each other across the snow-covered clearing. Then Silver turns and lopes back to the waiting pack. Together, they melt away into the forest. The encounter leaves Gabriel strangely moved, as if something significant has passed between them, though he couldn't possibly say what. Reed, shivering beside him, breaks the spell. "That was the weirdest damn thing I've ever seen." Gabriel nods slowly. "Welcome to the mountains." Inside, as they warm themselves by the fire, Reed asks the question that's been forming in Gabriel's mind as well. "What do you think they wanted?" Gabriel stares into the flames, considering. "Kanosh would say they were giving me a message." "What kind of message?" "Don't know." Gabriel adds another log to the fire. "But I got a feeling things are about to change." Reed raises an eyebrow. "Change how?" Gabriel looks toward the window, where the frozen night presses against the oiled paper covering. Guess we'll find out. The change comes 3 days later, with the wind. Gabriel wakes to a sound he's never heard before, a deep, rhythmic thrumming that seems to vibrate through the cabin's walls. For a moment, he thinks it might be an earthquake. Then he recognizes it. Wind. But not the normal mountain wind. Something different. Reed is awake too, sitting up in his bedroll, eyes wide. What is that? Gabriel moves to the window, wiping frost from the oiled paper to peer outside. The pre-dawn light shows trees bending almost double, snow swirling in massive clouds. But there's something else. The air looks different. Warmer, somehow. Chinook, Gabriel says, the word coming to him from some half-remembered conversation at a rendezvous. Warm wind from the west. Reed joins him at the window, blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He's regained enough strength to move around the cabin now, though extended activity still leaves him winded. Never heard of it. Happens sometimes in winter. Warm air comes over the mountains, melts everything for a few days. Old trappers call it the snow eater. As if to confirm his words, a massive chunk of snow slides from the cabin roof, hitting the ground with a muffled whomp. By full daylight, the transformation is astonishing. The temperature has risen at least 50 degrees in just hours. Snow is melting everywhere, running in rivulets, dripping from trees, collapsing in wet heaps. The air feels almost balmy compared to the bitter cold they've endured for months. Gabriel steps outside without his heavy furs for the first time since November, marveling at the change. The thermometer reads 45 degrees, practically summer after weeks of sub-zero temperatures. It's incredible, Reed says, joining him at the door, breathing the warm air deeply. How long will it last? Few days, maybe. Week at most. Gabriel surveys the rapidly changing landscape. Then winter comes back, usually harder than before. Reed's face falls slightly. Oh, but it's a break, Gabriel adds, not wanting to dampen the younger man's spirits. Chance to do things we couldn't before. And there's plenty to do. The Chinook offers a rare opportunity to make repairs, gather more wood without freezing, possibly even hunt more effectively as animals emerge from their winter hiding places. What can I help with? Reed asks, eager despite his lingering weakness. Gabriel considers him. Reed is still pale, still too thin, but the desperate grey pallor has left his face. Could use help stretching the wolverine pelt, been waiting for a warmer day. It's a good task for Reed, important but not too strenuous. The pelt has been curing for weeks, preserved by the cold. Now it needs proper stretching to be useful. As they work together, setting up a simple wooden frame and carefully stretching the pelt, Gabriel finds himself oddly comfortable with Reed's presence. The young man asks good questions, learns quickly, and doesn't fill the air with needless chatter. How'd you end up out here? Reed asks as they lace the pelt to the frame. You don't seem like most of the mountain men I've met. Gabriel secures a corner before answering. Worked in a factory in Philadelphia, textiles, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, breathing lint and dye fumes, until you coughed blood. He shrugs. One day just walked out, headed west, never looked back. Family? Gabriel hesitates. Parents died when I was 19. Fever. Sister married a shopkeeper in Baltimore. Haven't seen her in 7 years now. You ever miss it? Civilization? Gabriel looks around at the snow-covered mountains, the endless forest, the big sky. Thought I would. Don't though. Mostly. Reed nods thoughtfully. I miss some things. Hot baths. Fresh bread, girls. He smiles slightly. Especially girls. Gabriel chuckles. That part I understand. They finish stretching the pelt in comfortable silence. Gabriel studies their work with satisfaction. Good job. Make warm mittens or a hat when it's properly cured. The Chinook brings other visitors besides the warm wind. Mid-afternoon, Kanosh appears with another Ute hunter, a younger man introduced as Tabby. They bring news. The warm wind has driven game down from higher elevations. A small herd of elk has been spotted in the valley 2 miles south. Big hunting tomorrow, Kanosh explains. Many men needed. Good meat for all. Gabriel understands the invitation and what it represents. The Ute don't typically invite white men to join their hunts. I'd be honoured, he says. Me too, Reed adds quickly. Kanosh studies Reed skeptically. Still weak. Stay and guard camps. Reed looks disappointed but doesn't argue. Even he must recognise he lacks the strength for a proper hunt. Big storm comes after Chinook, Kanosh continues. Maybe 3 days. Must prepare. Gabriel nods, unsurprised. The respite is temporary, as mountain weather always is. We'll be ready. After the Ute depart, Gabriel and Reed use the remaining daylight to maximum advantage. They clear snow from the roof where it started to melt and might cause leaks. They check the cabins chinking, making repairs where needed. They hang meat and hides outside to air in the warmer temperatures. The work is pleasant in the mild air, almost like a normal spring day rather than a brief winter reprieve. Even Reed seems energized, though he tires quickly and needs frequent rest. As dusk approaches, the wind shifts slightly, bringing new scents, wet earth, pine sap, the faint muskiness of animals on the move. Gabriel pauses in his work, sensing something. He scans the tree line carefully. There. Movement. Silver emerges from the forest, watching him. The wolf looks different somehow, more alert, almost tense. He paces at the edge of the clearing, looking back repeatedly toward the forest, then at Gabriel. He wants something, Reed says, coming to stand beside Gabriel. Yeah. Gabriel studies the wolf's behavior. Wants me to follow, I think. Reed's eyes widen. You're not actually going to... But Gabriel is already reaching for his rifle. Won't go far, just want to see. That's insane, Reed protests. Following a wolf into the forest before dark, Gabriel checks his powder and shot. Probably, he agrees. Stay here. If I'm not back in an hour, tell Kanosh what happened. Before Reed can object further, Gabriel heads towards Silver. The wolf watches him approach, then turns and trots into the forest, looking back to ensure Gabriel follows. The going is messy. Melting snow creates a slushy surface that sucks at Gabriel's boots. He keeps Silver in sight, following as the wolf leads him deeper into the trees. After about 15 minutes of walking, Silver stops at the edge of a small ravine, looking down, then back at Gabriel. A clear invitation. Gabriel approaches cautiously, unsure what he's about to find. When he reaches the ravine edge and looks down, he understands. A dead elk lies half buried in snow at the bottom, a bull with an impressive rack, not long dead, no obvious wounds, though it's hard to tell from this distance. Possibly it broke through ice somewhere, escaped but succumbed to exhaustion or cold. Around the carcass, 3 wolves from Silver's pack feed. They look up at Gabriel's approach but don't run. Silver makes a low sound in his throat, almost like a purr. Gabriel stares in amazement. The wolves are sharing their find, enough meat to last him and Reed well into spring if they can retrieve and preserve it. Thank you, he says softly to Silver. The wolf simply watches him with those intelligent yellow eyes. Gabriel marks the location carefully in his mind, planning to return tomorrow with Reed and a sled. They'll need to work quickly to salvage the meat before it spoils in the warm weather. As he turns to head back, Silver follows, escorting him to the edge of the clearing before melting back into the forest. Reed is waiting anxiously at the cabin door. "You're alive? What happened?" Gabriel explains about the elk, still somewhat in awe of what just occurred. Reed listens with growing disbelief. "The wolves showed you where to find food deliberately?" "Yep." "And they were sharing it with you, not chasing you away?" "Yep." Reed shakes his head slowly. "That's not natural, Gabriel." Gabriel looks toward the forest where Silver disappeared. Maybe not for most men. That night they plan the next day carefully. They'll need to butcher the elk where it lies, load the meat onto a makeshift sled and haul it back to the cabin. Then the real work begins. Cutting, preserving, smoking what they can before the warm weather turns bad. "We'll leave at first light," Gabriel decides. "Need every hour of daylight we can get." Reed nods, looking more alive than he has since arriving. Having a purpose seems to have further accelerated his recovery. "I'll be ready." Morning brings continued warm temperatures and a strange green smell in the air, an early promise of spring that Gabriel knows is false. Winter isn't done with them yet. They set out after a hearty breakfast, pulling an improvised sled made from branches lashed together. Gabriel has packed his butchering knives, extra rope, and canvas for wrapping meat. The trek to the ravine takes longer with the sled and Reed's still limited stamina, but they reach it before midday. The elk carcass is untouched since yesterday, surprising as Gabriel expected the wolves to have taken more. Silver and one other wolf, the one Gabriel calls Shadow, lie nearby, apparently guarding the kill. They watch with interest as the humans approach but make no move to interfere. "This is unbelievable," Reed whispers, eyeing the wolves nervously. "Just don't make any sudden moves," Gabriel advises. "They're allowing this." The butchering is hard, messy work. Gabriel shows Reed how to make the initial cuts, how to separate muscle from bone, how to identify the prime sections worth taking versus what they'll leave for the wolves. The warm air means flies are already beginning to appear. They need to work quickly. By mid-afternoon, they've loaded the sled with as much meat as they can manage, easily 200 pounds of prime elk, more than enough to see them through the remainder of winter with careful preservation. Gabriel approaches the remaining carcass, where perhaps half the meat still remains. He looks at Silver, who has watched the entire process with seemingly patient interest. "The rest is yours," Gabriel says, making a small gesture of offering. "Thank you." As if understanding, Silver rises and moves toward the carcass, no longer holding back from his prize. The journey back to the cabin is slow and exhausting, both men straining against the loaded sled. Reed tires quickly, but pushes through, determined to do his part. Gabriel notes the younger man's growing strength and resolve with approval. They reach the cabin as dusk gathers, muscles burning, clothes soaked with sweat and blood. The immediate work isn't done. They need to hang the meat properly to cool overnight before beginning the preservation process tomorrow. As they work, Gabriel notices Reed watching him with a curious expression. "What?" he asks, hanging a large haunch from a cabin beam. Reed hesitates. "Just trying to understand you. Most men I know would have shot those wolves on sight, taken the whole elk for themselves." Gabriel continues his work, considering his answer. Wolves were there first. It was their kill. He secures another piece of meat. "Besides, there's more than enough for all of us." It's not just that though, is it? Reed presses. This connection you have with them, it's different. Gabriel pauses, knife in hand. How to explain something he doesn't fully understand himself. Been in these mountains 4 years now, he says slowly. First 2 years, I fought everything. The cold, the terrain, the animals. Was always exhausted, always hungry, always afraid. He gestures at the hanging meat. This past year, something changed. Started working with the mountains instead of against them. Listening more. Taking what I need, not what I want. Reed absorbs this. And the wolves sensed that somehow? Gabriel shrugs. Kanosh would say they recognized a kindred spirit, someone who belongs. He smiles slightly. Or maybe they're just smart enough to know that trading with humans is easier than fighting them. The next day is consumed with meat preservation, cutting strips for jerky, smoking some portions over a carefully tended fire, rendering fat for future use. It's detailed, exhausting work, but both men tackle it with the energy of those who know what starvation feels like. Kanosh visits briefly. On his way to the elk hunt, he examines their bounty with approval. Wolves brought you this, he states, rather than asks. Gabriel nods. Kanosh smiles faintly. Told you. Chosen. When he leaves, Reed shakes his head in wonderment. Still can't believe it. Wolves and Indians and mountain men all working together? Nobody back east would believe a word of this. Good thing you're not planning to tell them then, Gabriel replies with a wry smile. The Chinook holds for 2 more days, precious time they use to maximum advantage. They gather more wood from the stand Kanosh showed them, repair Gabriel's snowshoes, and finish preserving all the elk meat. The cabin now smells strongly of smoke and meat, but the hanging racks are full, security against whatever winter still has in store. On the evening of the 3rd day, the wind shifts. The warm breeze dies completely, replaced by an eerie stillness. The temperature begins to drop noticeably by the hour. Storm coming, Gabriel says, studying the western sky where clouds are gathering, dark and ominous. Reed, who's regained enough strength to be genuinely helpful now, nods soberly. How bad? Bad enough. Gabriel checks their preparations one last time. Wood stacked neatly by the fireplace, water bucket full, food accessible, extra chinking in place. We'll ride it out inside. Might be 3-4 days before we can open the door again. That night, snow begins falling. Gently at first, then with increasing intensity as the wind returns, this time from the north, bringing Arctic cold with it. Gabriel wakes several times to add wood to the fire, noting how the temperature plummets and the wind grows to a howl. By morning, the window is completely blocked with snow, and the door requires both men pushing to open it just a crack, enough to confirm they're essentially buried. Never seen anything like this, Reed says, his voice hushed with awe as they peer through the narrow opening at a wall of white. Spring blizzard, Gabriel explains, forcing the door closed again. Happens almost every year. Chinook teases you with warm weather, then winter reminds you who's really in charge. They settle in for the duration, conserving wood as much as possible while maintaining enough warmth to prevent freezing. The days pass slowly, marked by meals, fire tending, and conversation that grows deeper as the storm continues outside. Reed speaks of Boston, of the merchant father who wanted him to follow in the family business, of his rebellion in heading west to seek adventure. He talks of Margaret, the girl he hopes to marry if he makes it back alive. In turn, Gabriel finds himself sharing more than he has with anyone in years. Stories of his factory days, of the sister he still writes to occasionally, of his first disastrous winter in the mountains when he nearly starved because he didn't know how to preserve meat properly. "Would you ever go back?" Reed asks on the third night of their confinement. "To civilization?" Gabriel pokes at the fire, watching the embers glow and fade. "Used to think no, never, but sometimes," he hesitates. "Sometimes I think about having a place, not in a city, maybe a small settlement, somewhere I could have a proper garden, maybe some livestock." "A wife? Family?" Reed prompts. Gabriel snorts. "Been alone too long for that. Wouldn't know how to act around a woman anymore." "You'd remember quick enough," Reed says with a grin. Gabriel throws a stick at him and they both laugh, the sound strange and welcome in the snowed-in cabin. On the fourth day, the storm finally breaks. The silence after so much wind is almost shocking. It takes them nearly an hour to dig their way out the door, revealing a transformed world. Snow drifted higher than Gabriel's head in places, the entire clearing reshaped by wind and snow. The cold is back. The thermometer reads 12 below zero, but the sky is a clear, brilliant blue. Gabriel stands in the doorway, breathing deeply, savouring the fresh air after days of confinement. "Well," Reed says, surveying the winter wonderland around them, "that was exciting." Gabriel chuckles. Welcome to the Rockies in February. Never boring. As they begin the process of digging out, checking for damage and re-establishing their daily routines, Gabriel reflects on how much has changed since the beginning of winter. He's no longer alone, for one thing. Reed's presence has shifted from burden to companionship. The wolves have transformed from threat to allies. Even his relationship with the mountains themselves feels different, less adversarial, more like a dance between equals. Winter isn't done with them yet. There will be more storms, more bitter cold, more challenges before spring truly arrives. But for the first time since the snow began falling, Gabriel feels something like optimism. He pauses in his digging to look toward the forest edge. Silver stands there, watching as always. Gabriel raises a hand in greeting and the wolf seems to nod before turning back into the trees. "Strange times," Gabriel murmurs to himself. "Strange times indeed." February slides into March, though the transition means little in practical terms. Winter still grips the mountains, the snow still lies deep, and the cold still bites, though the days gradually lengthen. The routine Gabriel and Reed have established continues. Tending fire, melting snow for water, checking traps, making small repairs to equipment, and taking turns reading aloud from the St. Louis newspaper, which they've now memorized nearly word for word. The elk meat has proven a godsend. With full bellies, the cold seems less threatening, and their minds work better. Gabriel finds himself thinking beyond mere survival for the first time in months, planning improvements to the cabin for next winter, considering where to set his trap lines when spring finally arrives. Reed, fully recovered now, has grown restless. He paces the small cabin when weather keeps them inside, which is often. He talks increasingly of Boston, of Margaret, of plans for the future that have no place for mountain winters. "Think your parties still camp down in the valley?" Gabriel asks one evening, recognizing the younger man's growing cabin fever. Reed looks up from repairing a torn moccasin, a skill Gabriel taught him last week. If they're smart, that or they headed south to winter in Santa Fe. He hesitates. "Been thinking maybe I should try to find them when the snow melts enough." Gabriel nods, unsurprised. He'd seen this coming. "Probably wise." They might be worried about you. You could come too, Reed offers, though they both know it's not a serious suggestion. Trade your furs, get supplies, maybe even find company. Gabriel smiles faintly. Got company right here, don't I? Reed grins. Yeah, but I'm leaving first chance I get. No offence, but I'm not built for this life. None taken, not many are. The next morning dawns clear but brutally cold, 30 below according to the thermometer. They bundle up and head out together to check the trapline, which has been disappointingly empty for days. The wolves haven't brought any more gifts since the elk, but Gabriel still sees them regularly at the forest edge, watching. Think they're just keeping tabs on their investment? Reed jokes, nodding towards Silver, visible as a grey shape among the trees. Maybe, Gabriel says, though he senses it's more than that. The wolves seem to be waiting for something. They've nearly finished checking the empty traps when Gabriel spots it, smoke rising in a thin column from beyond the next ridge, not the natural smoke of a forest fire, but the controlled smoke of a campfire or cabin. Someone's over there, Reed says, following Gabriel's gaze. Gabriel nods, suddenly uneasy. He knows every trapper and settler within 30 miles, and none should be in that direction. Not Kanosh's camp, that's east of here. Should we check it out? Gabriel considers. His instinct is to avoid unknown humans. In his experience, strangers in the wilderness often bring trouble. But information has value too, especially as winter wanes and travel becomes possible again. Yeah, he decides, but carefully. They approach the smoke source with caution, moving from tree to tree for cover. As they crest the ridge, they spot the camp, 3 canvas tents arranged around a central fire, where men move about. Not a native camp, but white men, at least 6 of them, all armed with rifles. Those aren't trappers, Gabriel whispers, taking in the group's appearance. Their clothes are too new, their equipment too matched. Looks military, maybe? Reed studies them, then inhales sharply. I know who they are, Mackenzie's men, my party. Before Gabriel can stop him, Reed stands and waves his arms. Hey, over here! The men in the camp instantly reach for weapons, turning toward the sound. Gabriel curses under his breath and rises too, keeping his rifle pointed down but ready. It's Thomas Reed, Reed calls, from the Mackenzie expedition. After a tense moment, one of the men approaches, rifle raised. Reed, that really you? Yes, I got separated in the January blizzard. The man lowers his weapon slightly and turns to shout to the others. It's Reed. He's alive. What follows is a boisterous reunion. The Mackenzie party had indeed wintered in the valley, believing Reed long dead. This group of 6 had been sent to hunt and scout as supplies ran low, and the weather improved slightly. They're overjoyed to find their lost companion alive. Gabriel hangs back, watching the reunion with mixed feelings. These men represent Reed's world, not his. Their loud voices and backslapping camaraderie feel foreign after months of quiet conversation and the subtle communication of wilderness survival. Eventually, Reed remembers his manners and introduces Gabriel. This is Gabriel Blackwood. He saved my life. Took me in when I was half dead with lung fever. The men thank Gabriel with handshakes and offers of whiskey, which he accepts, a small swallow that burns pleasantly on the way down. It's the first liquor he's tasted in nearly a year. You're welcome to come back to the main camp with us. Their leader, a weathered man named Collins, offers. We've got decent supplies. Doctor too. Gabriel declines politely. Got my own place, but thanks. Reed, however, is clearly torn. Gabriel can see the conflict on his face, the pull of his own people versus the obligation he feels toward Gabriel. Go with them, Gabriel says quietly. You're well enough to travel. No sense sitting out the rest of winter in my cabin when your people are just over the ridge. Reed hesitates. You sure? I can stay and help until spring proper. Gabriel shakes his head. I was managing fine before you came. Will manage fine after. He means it kindly, though the words come out more bluntly than intended. Reed nods slowly, understanding. I'll come back before we head east. Properly, thank you. No need, Gabriel says, already turning to head back to his cabin. Good luck finding your Margaret. He leaves Reed with his companions, their voices fading behind him as he crests the ridge. The solitude he'd craved for weeks now feels strangely hollow. Back at the cabin, Gabriel adds wood to the fire and sits staring into the flames. He's alone again, and he should be relieved. Reed's departure means one less mouth to feed, more space in the small cabin, no more endless questions or stories about Boston. So why does the silence feel so heavy? A sound outside draws his attention, a familiar howl, Silver calling from the forest edge. Gabriel rises and goes to the door. The big wolf stands in the clearing, watching the cabin expectantly. Behind him, partially visible among the trees, are the others, Notch, Shadow, and the two younger wolves. Without fully understanding why, Gabriel reaches for his rifle and winter gear. Something tells him to follow, just as he had when Silver led him to the elk. Outside, the bitter cold stings his face, but he barely notices. Silver approaches closer than ever before, just a few yards away, then turns and trots toward the trees, looking back to ensure Gabriel follows. Gabriel does, trudging through the snow after the wolf, rifle ready, but not aimed. They travel for nearly an hour, moving northeast along a route Gabriel doesn't typically use. Silver sets a deliberate pace, not too fast, despite Gabriel's awkward progress on snowshoes. Finally, they crest a small rise, and Gabriel understands where they're going. Below, in a sheltered hollow surrounded by pines, lies a small, unfrozen pond, a hot spring. Steam rises from the surface, creating a mystical scene in the winter landscape. Gabriel has heard of the hot springs in these mountains, but never found this one. It's a treasure in winter, a place to truly get warm, to bathe, to soak cold, aching muscles. Silver stops at the edge of the hollow, watching Gabriel with those intelligent eyes. Then, surprisingly, the wolf lies down in the snow, as if settling in to wait. "You're not coming?" Gabriel asks, though he feels slightly foolish talking to a wolf. Silver just blinks slowly, making no move to follow as Gabriel descends toward the spring. The water is gloriously warm, not hot enough to scald, but easily 80 degrees, a shocking contrast to the frigid air. Gabriel tests it with his hand, then makes a decision. He glances back at Silver, still watching from the ridge, then begins removing his outer layers. It's a risk. Getting naked in sub-zero temperatures could mean death if something goes wrong, but the prospect of a warm soak after months of cold is irresistible. Working quickly to minimize exposure, Gabriel strips down to his skin, keeping his clothes in a neat pile on a nearby rock. Then, taking a deep breath, he steps into the spring. The sensation is indescribable, heat enveloping his cold, numbed body, penetrating muscles that have been tense for months. He sinks deeper until only his head remains above water and lets out an involuntary groan of pleasure. "Jesus," he whispers, feeling his body truly warm for the first time since autumn. "Thank you, Silver." For nearly an hour, Gabriel soaks in the spring, occasionally glancing up to confirm Silver still waits patiently on the ridge. The wolf hasn't moved, seemingly content to guard while Gabriel bathes. The experience is more than physical relief. It feels like a gift, a sacred moment of comfort in the harsh winter. Gabriel finds himself thinking of Canosh's words about being chosen, about belonging to this place. Perhaps this is part of what the Ute hunter meant. Eventually, practicality forces him from the water. The sun is lowering, and being caught outdoors after dark in wet clothes would be fatal. Reluctantly, Gabriel emerges from the spring, drying quickly with a scrap of hide before dressing rapidly in his still warm clothes. As he climbs back up to where Silver waits, he feels renewed, not just physically, but spiritually. Something has shifted inside him, some acceptance of his place in this wild world. Silver rises as Gabriel approaches, studying him with what almost looks like satisfaction. Then the wolf turns and leads the way back toward the cabin, following their earlier tracks. They arrive just before dusk, the temperature dropping rapidly as shadows lengthen. At the edge of the clearing, Silver stops. For a moment, wolf and man regard each other in the fading light. "I understand now," Gabriel says softly. "You're showing me how to survive, not just exist, really live here." Silver makes a soft sound in his throat, not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Then he turns and disappears into the trees, leaving Gabriel alone in the clearing. That night, Gabriel sleeps better than he has in months, his body relaxed from the hot spring, his mind at peace. The next week brings warmer days, still below freezing, but climbing into the 20s instead of hovering near zero. The sun's strength increases noticeably, and the snow begins to develop a crusty surface during the day before refreezing at night. Gabriel establishes a new routine without Reed. He visits the hot spring every third day, always accompanied by Silver, who seems to have appointed himself guardian during these vulnerable moments. The wolves continue to appear regularly at the forest edge, sometimes leaving small gifts. Rabbits mostly, once a peculiar shiny rock that Gabriel places on the small shelf beside his bed. In return, Gabriel leaves his own offerings, scraps of meat, carved wooden figures, once even the last of his coffee beans, a sacrifice that feels significant. He wonders occasionally about Reed, whether he's comfortable with his companions, whether he's told them about Gabriel's unusual relationship with the wolves. Probably not. Such tales would sound like madness or lies to most men. As March progresses, the first subtle signs of the coming thaw appear. Icicles drip during the warmest part of the day. Small patches of ground become visible on south-facing slopes. Birds return from their southern migrations, filling the forest with sound after months of silence. Gabriel keeps busy, repairing equipment, planning his spring trap lines, preparing for the muddy season that will come before true spring. But a question nags at him increasingly. What next? For 3 winters, his only goal has been survival. Now, with the elk meat securing his food needs and the wolf pack providing an unexpected alliance, survival seems less precarious. His thoughts turn more often to what Reed asked. Would he ever go back? Not to Philadelphia or factory work, certainly, but perhaps to some form of community? The question remains unanswered as a late winter storm blows in, dropping 8 inches of fresh snow and reminding Gabriel that winter isn't done yet, despite the calendar's progression. He's checking his trap line after the storm when he hears gunshots, 3 in rapid succession, followed by 2 more coming from the direction of the Mackenzie camp. Gabriel hesitates. The shots could be hunting, but the pattern suggests signaling. Something's wrong. He deliberates only briefly before changing course, heading toward the camp. The snow is deep and progress slow, but he pushes on, some instinct telling him that the shots mean trouble. As he nears the ridge overlooking the camp, he moves more cautiously, using the trees for cover. The scene below makes his blood run cold. The tents are half collapsed, equipment scattered, and 2 bodies lie in the snow. No movement is visible. Gabriel scans the area carefully before approaching, rifle ready. As he enters the camp, the signs of violence become clearer. Bullet holes in the tents, blood-stained snow, supplies strewn about as if looted. The bodies are Collins and another man Gabriel didn't know. Both shot multiple times. They've been dead for hours, their blood frozen on the snow. Gabriel checks the rest of the camp, finding no other bodies but signs that the remaining men fled, tracks leading south in obvious haste. Among the scattered supplies, he finds a blood-stained journal with Reed's name inside the cover. More blood trails lead into the trees northward, different from the tracks of the fleeing survivors. Someone wounded went that direction. Gabriel follows the blood trail, moving carefully, all senses alert. The splashes of crimson stand out vividly against the white snow, becoming more frequent as he progresses. About half a mile from camp, he finds Reed. The young man lies propped against a pine tree, his coat soaked with blood from a wound in his side. He's conscious, but barely, his face grey with shock and blood loss. "Gabriel," he whispers, eyes focusing with difficulty. "Don't talk," Gabriel says, quickly assessing the wound. Gunshot entered the right side below the ribs. No exit wound. Bad, but not immediately fatal if the bleeding can be stopped. "Indians," Reed manages. "Blackfoot. Wanted our guns." Gabriel shakes his head. "Save your strength. Need to get you back to my cabin." Moving Reed will be dangerous, but leaving him means certain death. Gabriel creates a quick travois from branches and his coat, securing Reed to it as gently as possible. The young man loses consciousness during the process, which is perhaps a mercy. The journey back to the cabin is grueling. Gabriel strains against the travois, forcing his way through deep snow, stopping frequently to check Reed's condition. The blood trail behind them is concerning, but the cold may actually be helping, slowing the bleeding through constricted blood vessels. Near the halfway point, movement in the trees catches Gabriel's attention. Silver appears, followed by Notch and Shadow. The wolves pace alongside for a while, then Silver peels off, moving ahead rapidly through the forest. When Gabriel finally drags the travois into the clearing before his cabin, he's shocked to find Canoche waiting, Silver sitting calmly beside him. "Wolf said you need help," Canoche states simply, moving immediately to examine Reed. Gabriel is too exhausted and worried to question the Utes' sudden appearance or his claim about Silver. Together, they carry Reed into the cabin and place him on Gabriel's bed. Canoche examines the wound with practiced hands. Bullet still inside, must come out. Gabriel knows what this means. Pain for Reed that would make his lung fever seem pleasant by comparison. Will he survive it? Canoche's expression remains neutral. Strong young man, good chance. He begins removing items from the medicine pouch at his waist. Need fire, water, clean cloth? Gabriel moves quickly to prepare what's needed, stoking the fire to maximum heat, melting clean snow, and finding the cleanest rags he possesses. Meanwhile, Canoche creates a paste from various powders and plants, murmuring words Gabriel doesn't understand. "Hold him," Canoche instructs, producing a wicked-looking knife that he places in the fire to heat. Gabriel positions himself at Reed's shoulders, gripping firmly. Even unconscious, the young man will likely fight when the pain hits. Canoche works with remarkable efficiency, swift, precise movements as he cleans the wound, then makes an incision to widen the bullet's path. Reed jerks and moans, but doesn't fully wake, which is a blessing. Using slender wooden tools from his pouch, Canoche probes the wound, his face a mask of concentration. After what seems an eternity, he nods with satisfaction and withdraws the tool, a misshapen lead ball gripped at its end. "Out," he announces, dropping the bloody bullet into Gabriel's palm. Now clean, medicine, pray to his spirit to stay. They work together, cleaning the wound thoroughly, applying Kanosh's medicine paste and binding it with the cleanest cloths. Throughout the procedure, Silver watches from the doorway, yellow eyes unblinking. When they've done all they can, Reed lies pale but breathing steadily, the wound dressed and his body covered with blankets. Kanosh sits back, wiping blood from his hands. "Now we wait," he says simply. Gabriel nods, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. "Thank you, but how did you know to come?" Kanosh gestures towards Silver, who still observes from the doorway. "Told you, wolf medicine. Wolf came to my camp, made me follow. I knew you needed help." Gabriel looks at Silver with new amazement. The wolf returns his gaze steadily, then turns and trots away from the cabin, disappearing into the gathering dusk. "Rest," Kanosh advises. "I watch tonight. Tomorrow, your turn." Exhaustion crashes over Gabriel like a physical wave. He manages only to roll out his bedding beside the fire before sleep claims him, deep and dreamless. In his last moments of consciousness, he hears Kanosh's voice, soft in the firelit cabin. "You understand now why wolves chose you, because you listen, because you belong." And then there is only darkness and the howl of wolves somewhere in the distance calling to the rising moon. Gabriel wakes to birdsong, a simple miracle after months of winter silence. For a moment he lies still, disoriented by the sound and the quality of light filtering through the cabin's window. Then memory returns, Reed's wounding, the desperate journey back. Kanosh's skilled hands removing the bullet. He sits up quickly, looking toward his bed where Reed lies pale but breathing, Kanosh dozing in a sitting position nearby. The fire burns low but steady, the cabin warm despite the early hour. Outside, a chorus of chickadees and nuthatches announces what Gabriel already senses, a significant shift in the weather. He rises quietly, careful not to wake the others, and moves to the door. The world beyond the cabin has transformed overnight. The temperature must have risen dramatically, because snow slides from tree branches in wet clumps and water drips steadily from the cabin's eaves. The thermometer confirms it, 38 degrees, well above freezing. "First real thaw," Gabriel murmurs to himself. Not a Chinook this time, but the genuine beginning of winter's end. He breathes deeply, savouring the changed air, still cold but carrying subtle scents that have been absent for months. Wet earth, faint hints of vegetation, the indefinable smell of growing things awakening. Movement at the forest edge catches his eye. Silver, watching as always. The wolf seems different somehow, more alert, almost anxious. He paces back and forth, looking toward the cabin, then back at the forest. Before Gabriel can interpret this behavior, Kanosh speaks behind him. He worries for the young one, the Ute hunter says, joining Gabriel at the door. Wolves care for their pack. Gabriel glances back at Reed's still form on the bed. "How is he?" "Fever, but not bad fever. Good sign." Kanosh nods slightly. "Will live, I think, if infection stays away." Relief floods through Gabriel. He hadn't realized until this moment how much he's come to care for Reed's survival. "Thank you for coming, for helping." Kanosh acknowledges this with a slight gesture. "Wolf brought me, thank him." As if hearing his cue, Silver approaches closer than ever before, coming within 10 yards of the cabin before stopping. His gaze fixes on Gabriel with unnerving intensity. "What does he want?" Gabriel asks quietly. Kanosh studies the wolf. Change comes. He feels it. The Ute hunter looks up at the dripping eaves, the melting snow. Dangerous time now. Water everywhere. Ice breaking. Animals hungry after long winter. Gabriel nods his understanding. The thaw, while welcome, brings its own hazards. Snowmelt creates treacherous conditions, mud that can swallow a horse, rivers that transform from solid ice to raging torrents within days, slopes destabilized by water that can slide without warning. Or need to prepare, Gabriel says, mentally cataloguing the tasks ahead, securing the cabin against flooding, checking nearby slopes for avalanche risk, ensuring their food remains protected as hungry predators emerge from winter dens. Kanosh hums agreement. I stay one more day, help with the young one, then must return to my people, prepare for moving to summer grounds. Inside the cabin, Reed stirs, moaning softly. Both men move to his side. The young Bostonian's eyes flutter open, clouded with pain and confusion. What happened? He whispers, voice cracked and dry. Gabriel holds a water cup to his lips. Blackfoot attacked your camp. You were shot. Brought you back here. Reed drinks weakly, wincing as the movement pulls at his wound. The others? Gabriel hesitates. Collins and Miller dead. Rest fled south. Reed absorbs this with a grimace. Remember now, they came at dawn, no warning. His eyes close briefly against the memory. How bad am I hit? Bad enough, Gabriel says honestly. But Kanosh removed the ball. Clean wound. You're young, strong, should heal. How long? Gabriel glances at Kanosh, who answers, 1 moon to walk short distance, 2 moons to travel. Reed nods slightly, accepting this assessment. Thank you, both of you. His gaze moves to the door, where Silver is still visible. And the wolf? Did he help too? Gabriel smiles faintly. He fetched Kanosh, so yes. Reed's eyes widen slightly before he chuckles, then grimaces at the pain it causes. Of course he did. Why am I not surprised anymore? The day passes in careful preparation for the challenges of thaw. Gabriel reinforces the cabin's drainage channels, ensuring that meltwater will flow away rather than undermining the foundation. He checks their food stores, confirming that everything is secure against the increased animal activity spring will bring. Kanosh tends to read, changing the wound dressing and preparing more medicine, a bitter-smelling tea that Reed drinks with obvious reluctance but visible benefit. By evening, the young man's fever has broken, and he's lucid enough to eat a small portion of elk broth. The wolves remain unusually active around the clearing all day, not just Silver, but the entire pack, appearing and disappearing among the trees. Their behavior reinforces Kanosh's warning. Change is coming and the mountains are restless. That night, as Reed sleeps and Kanosh meditates by the fire, Gabriel steps outside to check the weather before bed. The temperature has dropped with the sun, refreezing the day's melt into a slick crust. Stars blaze overhead in a clear sky that promises another warm day tomorrow. A soft sound behind him, not quite a footstep, but a deliberate noise, makes Gabriel turn slowly. Silver stands just 15 feet away, closer than he's ever come before. In the moonlight, the wolf's yellow eyes seem to glow with inner light. What is it? Gabriel asks softly, instinctively keeping his voice low, though there's no one to wake. The wolf takes another step closer, then stops. For a long moment, they simply look at each other. Gabriel has the distinct sense that Silver is trying to communicate something beyond his comprehension. I don't understand, Gabriel admits. Silver makes a soft sound in his throat, then turns and melts into the shadows. When Gabriel returns inside, Kanosh watches him with knowing eyes. Wolf spoke to you? Tried to. Don't know what he wanted. Kanosh nods, as if this makes perfect sense. We'll understand when ready. Sleep now. Tomorrow I leave. You care for young one alone. Morning brings another shift in the weather. even warmer, the temperature climbing into the 40s by midday. The snow recedes visibly, exposing patches of earth that haven't seen sunlight since November. The sound of running water is everywhere, dripping from trees, trickling beneath remaining snowbanks, gurgling in newly formed streams. Canosh prepares to depart after checking Reed's wound one final time. The Ute hunter seems satisfied with the healing progress and leaves additional medicine with careful instructions for Gabriel. Change dressing each day, give tea morning, night, keep warm, clean. He points to Reed's chest. Watch breathing. If becomes hard, make steam with pine needles for him to breathe. Gabriel absorbs these instructions seriously. I understand. Thank you again. Canosh pauses at the door. We'll see you at spring gathering by Big Lake. Bring the young one if strong enough. Bring wolfskins to trade. It's not a question, but Gabriel nods anyway. The spring gathering, a smaller version of the summer rendezvous where trappers, hunters, and tribes meet to trade, happens each year as the mountain passes open. Gabriel has attended twice before. We'll be there, he promises. After Canosh departs, Gabriel settles into a new routine, caring for Reed, whose strength returns gradually, while managing the increasingly challenging conditions outside. The thaw accelerates over the next week. Snow that has blanketed the landscape for months disappears with astonishing speed, revealing a transformed world of mud, fallen trees, and the debris of winter. The stream near the cabin, frozen solid since December, now rages with meltwater, forcing Gabriel to travel twice as far to find a safe crossing. Reed improves daily, progressing from barely sitting up to moving around the cabin with support. His natural optimism returns with his strength, and he speaks increasingly of the future, returning to Boston, finding Margaret, perhaps bringing her west to the new settlements springing up along the frontier. You should come with me, he tells Gabriel one evening as they share a meal of elk stew. When I'm well enough to travel, see something besides these mountains for a while. Gabriel pauses mid-bite, considering. The invitation stirs something in him. Curiosity, perhaps, about the world he left behind, but something else too, a subtle resistance, like the feeling of a trap about to close. Got trapping to do when the pass is clear, he says finally. Furs to collect, supplies to trade for. Reed studies him. That's not really an answer. Gabriel shrugs. Only one I've got right now. The wolves remain a constant presence, though their behaviour changes with the thaw. They range more widely, sometimes disappearing for days before returning to patrol the clearing's edge. Gabriel still leaves offerings and occasionally finds small gifts in return. Interesting stones, a perfect eagle feather, once a curious blue flower that must have bloomed early in some sheltered spot. Silver continues his strange attempts at communication. The big wolf will approach closer than the others, catching Gabriel's eye with unmistakable intentionality, then look towards specific directions in the forest. Sometimes Gabriel follows, discovering useful things. A patch of early spring onions, a beaver dam ready for trapping when the season opens, a deer trail that will be worth watching as game returns. It's like he's teaching you, Reed observes after Gabriel returns from one such excursion with a handful of medicinal herbs Silver led him to. Like an apprenticeship. Gabriel hadn't thought of it that way, but the description feels right. Suppose so. Strangest mentor I've ever had. Reed grins. Better than my father's shipping instructors, I'll wager. They never brought me gifts. As March edges toward April, the transformation accelerates. The remaining snow retreats to north-facing slopes and deep shadows. Buds appear on aspen trees. Early wildflowers push through the sodden earth in sunny clearings. Birds build nests, their songs filling the dawn hours with complicated melodies. Gabriel finds himself watching these changes with an appreciation that goes beyond survival considerations. There's beauty here in the resilience of life returning after such profound dormancy. He points out particularly striking examples to Reed, who listens with growing interest. "Never thought I'd see you get excited about flowers, Blackwood," Reed teases after Gabriel describes a patch of glacier lilies he discovered while checking traps. Gabriel feels oddly embarrassed, but not enough to stop. Spent 3 winters just trying not to die. Nice to notice more than that. The revelation surprises him even as he says it. His relationship with these mountains has changed fundamentally. Where once he saw only threats and resources, he now perceives patterns, connections, even beauty. One particularly warm afternoon, Gabriel returns from checking a newly set trapline to find Reed sitting outside the cabin on a makeshift bench, face turned up to the sun. The young man looks more like himself than he has since the shooting. Colour in his cheeks, brightness in his eyes. "Feel that?" Reed asks without opening his eyes. "Actually warm. Thought I'd never be warm again." Gabriel sits beside him, his own face lifted to the pleasant heat. "Never lasts as long as you want." "Such an optimist," Reed says with a laugh. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, absorbing the sun's gift. Finally, Reed speaks again, his tone more serious. "Been thinking about what happens when I'm well enough to travel." Gabriel nods, unsurprised. Reed's improvement has been steady. In another few weeks, he'll be strong enough for a careful journey. Figured you'd head east, find your Margaret. That's the plan. But Reed hesitates. What about you? What's your plan, Gabriel? It's a simple question, but it lands heavily. What is his plan? For years, Gabriel has existed season to season, focused entirely on immediate survival, the future extended only as far as the next winter's preparations. Haven't thought much beyond spring trapping, he admits. Need supplies, ammunition, coffee. Reed turns to face him directly. That's not what I meant. What do you want? From your life? The question is so unexpected that Gabriel has no ready answer. Want? Survival has consumed his attention so completely that wants seemed irrelevant. But as the silence stretches, he realizes that's no longer entirely true. Images form in his mind. A larger cabin, perhaps with a proper garden plot. Maybe livestock, chickens or goats. A workshop for the wood carvings he's found himself creating in winter's quiet hours. Not Philadelphia, not civilization as Reed would define it, but something more than mere existence. Might build something better than this cabin, he says finally, somewhere with good water, good hunting, room for growing things. Reed nods encouragingly. A proper homestead, you could do well at that. Gabriel shrugs, suddenly self-conscious. Just thoughts. Good thoughts, Reed insists. Man needs more than just surviving. Before Gabriel can respond, movement at the forest edge catches their attention. Silver has appeared, watching them with his usual intensity, but something's different. The wolf seems agitated, pacing back and forth, occasionally looking behind him into the trees. Gabriel stands, instantly alert. Something's wrong. Reed follows his gaze. The wolf? How can you tell? Just can. Gabriel retrieves his rifle from inside the cabin, checking that it's loaded. Stay here. He approaches Silver cautiously. The wolf watches his approach, then turns and trots a few yards into the forest before stopping, looking back expectantly. The message is clear. Follow me. Gabriel hesitates only briefly before doing so, keeping his rifle ready. Silver leads him along a game trail that winds through awakening underbrush. They travel for perhaps 15 minutes before the wolf stops, looking intently ahead. Gabriel follows his gaze and sees it, a bear recently emerged from hibernation, a grizzly, massive even, in its winter-starved state, digging furiously at a fallen log about 50 yards away. The animal hasn't noticed them yet, focused entirely on whatever food it's pursuing. Gabriel starts to back away slowly. A hungry bear fresh from hibernation is among the most dangerous creatures in the mountains. But Silver growls softly, still looking intently at the bear. That's when Gabriel notices what the wolf has clearly already seen, a shape behind the fallen log, a human form, motionless. His breath catches. Someone is down, possibly dead, with a grizzly just yards away. Gabriel raises his rifle but hesitates. The shot would need to be perfect. A wounded grizzly is even more dangerous than a hungry one, and if he misses entirely, he'll simply draw the bear's attention to himself. Silver whines softly beside him, yellow eyes fixed on Gabriel's face. There's an expectation there, a trust that Gabriel will handle this threat that the wolf pack cannot. Drawing a deep breath, Gabriel aims carefully, compensating for distance and the slight breeze. He exhales slowly, then squeezes the trigger. The rifle's report shatters the forest quiet. The bear rears up with a roar of surprise and pain, blood blooming on its shoulder. A good hit, but not immediately fatal. Gabriel chambers another round rapidly as the bear crashes down on all fours, swinging its massive head to locate the threat. It spots Gabriel and charges with shocking speed for such a large animal. Silver barks once and darts to the side, a grey blur that momentarily distracts the bear. The pause gives Gabriel the moment he needs to aim again. His second shot hits the grizzly in the chest. The bear stumbles but doesn't fall, still coming, now just 30 yards away. Gabriel fires a third time, his hands remarkably steady despite the imminent danger. This bullet finds the bear's heart. The massive animal crashes forward onto the forest floor, slides several feet with momentum and lies still. Gabriel keeps his rifle trained on the motionless bear for several long moments, making absolutely certain it's dead. Only when he's convinced does he approach the fallen log to investigate the human form behind it. It's a man, native but not Ute by his clothing. Blackfoot most likely. Blood stains the front of his buckskin shirt from what appears to be a gunshot wound. Recently dead, probably less than a day. Gabriel searches the area, finding a rifle and pack nearby. The story becomes clear. This Blackfoot, perhaps wounded in the same attack on the Mackenzie camp, had sought shelter here only to be discovered by the awakening bear. Silver approaches, sniffing at the dead man with obvious caution. "Same ones who shot Reed," Gabriel tells the wolf, feeling slightly foolish for explaining but unable to help himself. Probably dying already when the bear found him. Silver looks up at Gabriel, then toward the bear, then back to Gabriel. Again, that sense of communication beyond words, approval perhaps, acknowledgement of justice served. Gabriel shakes his head, bemused by his own thoughts. Let's get back, check on Reed. The wolf leads the way, moving with confidence through the emerging spring forest. Gabriel follows, reflecting on the strangeness of his life now, following a wolf, communicating with him almost as with a human companion, trusting his guidance implicitly. Back at the cabin, Reed waits anxiously, relief washing over his face as Gabriel emerges from the trees. "Heard shots," he explains. "Was worried." Gabriel relates what happened as they move inside, the afternoon turning cool as clouds gather above the mountains. Reed listens with wide eyes. The wolf led you straight to him, to the Blackfoot, to the bear, I think. The man was just there. Reed shakes his head in wonder. Coincidence? Or did the wolf somehow know? Gabriel has no answer to that. The line between coincidence and purpose has blurred so completely in his interactions with the wolves that he no longer tries to distinguish between them. That night, as Reed sleeps and Gabriel sits by the fire, his thoughts circle back to Reed's question from earlier. What does he want? What is his plan? For the first time in years, he allows himself to truly consider a future beyond mere survival. The mountains have tested him, nearly killed him multiple times, but they've also given him something he never found in civilization, a sense of belonging, of connection, of purpose. Outside, the wolves begin their evening chorus, not the hungry howls of winter, but something more melodic, almost joyous. Silver's voice rises above the others, clear and strong in the spring night. Gabriel listens, feeling something shift inside him, some final resistance giving way. Whatever his future holds, it belongs here, in these mountains, with these strange allies he's made. I understand now, he whispers to the fire. I understand. April arrives with a rush of life and colour. Where once there was only white and grey, now green unfurls across the landscape, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Wildflowers appear in sheltered meadows, splashing purple, yellow and white across the emerging grass. Aspen buds burst into tiny, perfect leaves that shimmer in the strengthening sun. Gabriel watches these changes with the deep appreciation of someone who's survived the alternative. After months of cold and deprivation, the simple pleasure of warmth and growth feels profound. Reed continues to improve, now able to walk short distances outside the cabin without assistance. His wound has healed cleanly, a puckered scar that will always remind him of his mountain winter, but no lingering damage that will limit his future. Couple more weeks, Gabriel assesses as they sit outside the cabin one mild afternoon. Then you'll be strong enough to travel. Reed nods, absently touching his side where the bullet entered. Think my party is still around, or did they head east already? Hard to say. If they're smart, they waited for the passes to clear. Gabriel gestures toward the high mountains visible in the distance, their peaks still snow-covered. Another month, maybe less, before those are safe to cross. They sit in comfortable silence, watching a pair of jays squabble in a nearby pine. So much has changed since Reed stumbled into Gabriel's life, half dead with lung fever. The younger man has lost the soft look of an Easterner, his face leaner, his hands calloused from cabin chores. But more than physical changes, there's a confidence about him now, a quiet understanding of what he's survived. Ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't found your cabin? Reed asks suddenly. Gabriel considers this. You'd have died. Winter doesn't give second chances. Yeah, Reed's expression turns thoughtful. Guess I owe you my life twice over now. Once for taking me in, once for bringing me back after I was shot. Gabriel shrugs, uncomfortable with gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. Oh no, Reed says firmly. They wouldn't. Most men out here would have seen a liability, not a responsibility. He pauses, looking directly at Gabriel. That's what makes you different. Why the wolves chose you, maybe. Before Gabriel can respond to this, Silver appears at the forest edge, watching them with his usual intensity. The big wolf has continued his regular visits, though the rest of the pack has been seen less frequently as spring advances and hunting improves elsewhere. Speaking of your furry friend, Reed nods towards Silver. He's been scarce the past few days. Hunting's better now. Don't need our scraps as much. Reed studies the wolf thoughtfully. Don't think it was ever about the food, really. Not after the first encounters anyway. Gabriel has come to the same conclusion, though he struggles to articulate an alternative explanation. The relationship has evolved into something that defies simple definition. Not exactly friendship, but a form of mutual recognition, of respect between different but parallel lives. Silver approaches closer than usual, coming within yards of where they sit. The wolf looks directly at Gabriel, then turns his gaze meaningfully toward the forest. "He wants you to follow again," Reed observes. Gabriel nods, already reaching for his rifle out of habit, though he doubts he'll need it. These forest excursions with Silver have become routine, the wolf leading him to useful plants, good hunting spots, or interesting features he might otherwise have missed. "Won't be long," he tells Reed, who waves him off with a smile. "Take your time. I'll just sit here and enjoy not freezing to death." Gabriel follows Silver into the forest, noting how different the journey is from their winter travels. The snow is gone except in the deepest shadows. The ground alternates between muddy and springy with new growth. Birds call from every direction, and fresh animal tracks mark the damp earth. Deer, elk, smaller creatures emerging from winter's grip. Silver leads him along an unfamiliar route, moving uphill through increasingly dense forest. The wolf sets a deliberate pace, fast enough to cover ground but slow enough for Gabriel to keep up despite the challenging terrain. After nearly an hour of steady climbing, they crest a ridge and Silver stops. The wolf looks at Gabriel, then toward what lies beyond. Gabriel steps forward and catches his breath at the view. Below them stretches a perfect mountain valley, a natural meadow perhaps 2 miles long and half as wide, bisected by a clear stream that catches the afternoon sun like scattered diamonds. The valley's southern exposure has allowed it to advance further into spring than the surrounding forest. Green grass covers most of the open ground, dotted with wildflowers. Along the stream grow willows, their new leaves bright against red branches. But what catches Gabriel's attention most are the animals. A small herd of elk grazes peacefully near the western end of the meadow. Closer to the stream, several deer drink, unconcerned. Near the northern edge, he spots a black bear with 2 cubs, teaching them to turn over rocks in search of insects. It's an Eden, a perfect mountain valley teeming with game, water, and plant life, sheltered by surrounding ridges. Silver watches Gabriel's reaction with what almost seems like satisfaction. The wolf sits, regarding the valley alongside the man, as if jointly appreciating its beauty and bounty. Gabriel understands immediately. This is what Silver has been trying to communicate, perhaps all along, not just survival tips or hunting opportunities, but a place, a perfect place for both man and wolf. "This is it, isn't it?" Gabriel says softly. "This is what you've been showing me toward." Silver makes a soft sound in his throat, not quite a growl, not quite a whine, but something in between. His yellow eyes meet Gabriel's with unmistakable intelligence. Gabriel studies the valley more carefully now, noting potential cabin sites, the proximity to water, the abundant game, the natural protection offered by the surrounding ridges. It's everything he would look for in a permanent settlement, everything he's been unconsciously seeking. "Thank you," he says simply. The wolf rises, seeming satisfied that his message has been received. Together, they make their way back down toward Gabriel's current cabin, the journey somehow lighter despite being uphill on the return. When they reach the clearing, Reed is still sitting outside, whittling a piece of wood with the small knife Gabriel lent him. He looks up at their approach. "Successful journey?" he asks, noting Gabriel's expression. "Found something," Gabriel confirms, sitting beside him. "Valley, about an hour north, perfect spot for a proper cabin. Good water, good hunting, sheltered." Reed studies him. "You're going to move there? Build something new?" "Think so, once you're on your way east." Gabriel glances toward Silver, who watches from the edge of the clearing. "Feels right. He showed you, didn't he? The wolf." Gabriel nods. Been trying to for a while, I think. Just took me time to understand. Reed's expression is fascinated. That's not how animals behave, Gabriel. You know that, right? Maybe not with most men, Gabriel concedes. But Kanosh said it. The wolves chose me. Still don't fully understand why, but I'm done questioning it. That evening, as they prepare a meal of fresh rabbit, caught in one of Gabriel's traps, a welcome change from preserved elk, Reed broaches the subject that's clearly been on his mind. You're really going to stay, aren't you? Not just another season, but for good. Gabriel tends the cooking meat, considering his answer. A month ago, even a week ago, he might have been uncertain, but the valley has crystallized something that's been forming in him for months. Yes, he says simply. This is my place now. Reed nods slowly. What about winter? It nearly killed us both. Be better prepared next time. Bigger woodpile, more food stored, better cabin. Gabriel turns the meat, watching fat sizzle into the fire. Winter's only deadly when you fight it. Need to work with it instead, like you work with the wolves, Reed observes. Exactly. Reed falls silent, clearly turning something over in his mind. Finally, he speaks again. My offer still stands, you know. Come east with me, at least for a visit. See some civilization again before you commit to this. He gestures vaguely at the wilderness around them. Gabriel appreciates the offer, recognizes the genuine concern behind it, but his path is becoming clearer with each passing day. This is my civilization now, he says, not unkindly. Different from yours, but it works for me. Reed accepts this with a nod, though Gabriel can see he doesn't fully understand. How could he? The connection Gabriel has formed with these mountains, with the wolves, with the rhythm of wild seasons, it's something that must be experienced, not explained. As April progresses toward May, the transformation from winter to spring accelerates. The days grow steadily longer and warmer. The forest canopy fills in with new leaves. Game becomes more plentiful as animals recover from winter's deprivation. The stream near the cabin runs clear and full with the last of the snowmelt from higher elevations. Gabriel begins preparations for 2 parallel journeys, Reed's return to civilization and his own move to the valley Silver showed him. He helps Reed build strength through increasingly longer walks. Meanwhile, he scouts the route to the valley multiple times, identifying the best path for moving his essential possessions. Silver remains a regular presence, though the wolf seems more relaxed now that Gabriel has understood his message. Sometimes he accompanies them on Reed's conditioning walks, maintaining a respectful distance, but clearly monitoring their progress. Still can't get over it, Reed comments after one such excursion. A wolf acting like a concerned neighbour, checking on my recovery. Gabriel smiles slightly. He's invested in both of us now, saved both our lives in different ways. One bright morning in early May, Kanosh appears in the clearing, accompanied by 2 younger Ute men. The hunting party is on their way to the spring gathering by the big lake, as promised months earlier. Young one walks now, Kanosh observes with satisfaction after greeting them. Strong again. Thanks to your medicine, Reed acknowledges. Kanosh dismisses this with a gesture. Your spirit chose to stay. Medicine only helped. The Ute hunter studies Gabriel with his penetrating gaze. You found your place, he states, rather than asks. Wolf showed you. Gabriel nods, no longer surprised by Kanosh's intuition. Valley, north of here, moving there after Reed leaves. Kanosh smiles faintly. Good valley, know it, good water, good hunting. He looks toward the forest where Silver has appeared, watching the gathering. Wolf chose well for you. The Ute party stays only briefly, continuing their journey toward the gathering place. Before leaving, Kanosh extends a formal invitation. Bring furs to trade. Both of you welcome. He glances at Reed. Even those returning east should see how tribes and mountain men meet in peace. After they depart, Reed turns to Gabriel with raised eyebrows. Might be my last chance to see something like that before heading back to Boston. What do you think? Strong enough to travel there before I go east? Gabriel considers Reed's condition. The young man has regained most of his strength, though he tires more quickly than before his injury. The gathering is perhaps 3 days' journey at an easy pace. Could manage it, he decides. Be good for you to see, might not get another chance. And so their final days in the cabin take on a new purpose. Preparation for the gathering. Gabriel sorts his winter furs, selecting the prime beaver, marten, and wolf pelts he'll trade for supplies. Reed helps where he can, learning the finer points of evaluating fur quality and preparing pelts for maximum value. A sense of anticipation builds as the departure date approaches. For Reed, it represents a step closer to his eventual return east. For Gabriel, it's a transition point. After the gathering, he'll return not to this cabin, but to his new valley, to begin building something more permanent. The night before they plan to leave, Gabriel steps outside for a final check of their packed supplies. The evening is mild, the sky clear, with the first stars appearing in the darkening east. Silver materializes from the forest shadows, approaching closer than ever before. Just a few feet away, the wolf regards Gabriel with an intensity that feels significant, a culmination of their months of interaction. Gabriel stands perfectly still, sensing the importance of the moment. Slowly, with deliberate movement, Silver closes the remaining distance between them. For the first time, wolf and man stand close enough to touch. Gabriel can see individual hairs in Silver's thick coat, can smell his wild scent, can feel the heat radiating from the powerful body. Instinctively, Gabriel extends his hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. Silver regards it for a moment, then does something extraordinary. He lifts his muzzle and gently, briefly touches Gabriel's fingertips with his nose. The contact lasts only a second, but it carries the weight of months of building trust, of lives saved, of knowledge shared. Then Silver steps back, turns and disappears into the forest with fluid grace. When Gabriel returns inside, Reed looks up from his packing, noting Gabriel's expression. What happened? Gabriel flexes his fingers, still feeling the momentary touch of the wolf's muzzle. Said goodbye, I think. In his way. Reed frowns slightly. You'll see him again, though? At your new place? Maybe, maybe not. Gabriel continues his preparations. He's done what he needed to do? Showed me the way? Rest is up to me now? The journey to the gathering passes without incident. 3 days of steady travel through a landscape fully embracing spring. Reed handles the trek better than either of them expected, his body remembering its strength as they progress. The gathering itself is an eye-opener for Reed, who has never seen anything like it. Several hundred people, mountain men, Native Americans from multiple tribes, even a few Mexican traders who've come up from the south, all camped around a large mountain lake, engaged in a complex dance of trade, storytelling, and celebration. It's a whole world, Reed marvels as they establish their small camp at the gathering's edge. Never imagined anything like this existed out here. Gabriel navigates the gathering with the quiet confidence of experience. He trades his furs for essentials, ammunition, coffee, salt, a new axe head, a few luxuries like sugar and tobacco. Reed watches and learns, occasionally wandering off to observe other aspects of the unique cultural exchange. On their 3rd day at the gathering, Reed returns to their camp with news. Found some men from the American Fur Company, he announces. They're heading east in 2 days. Said I could join them if I wanted. Gabriel nods, unsurprised, but feeling a pang nonetheless. Their paths are diverging, as they always were meant to. Good company? He asks. Seem decent enough. Experienced on the trail. Reed hesitates. It's time, Gabriel. I need to get back. Find Margaret, if she's still waiting. She will be, Gabriel assures him. Not every day a girl finds a man who survived a Rocky Mountain winter with a bullet in him. Reed laughs, then grows serious. I'll never be able to repay what you did for me. Gabriel shakes his head. Nothing to repay. You'd have done the same. Maybe now I would. Before I met you. Not sure. Reed extends his hand. I won't say goodbye yet. Still have 2 days. Their final days together pass quickly, filled with last-minute trades and preparations for their separate journeys. Gabriel gives Reed a small carved wolf as a parting gift, a reminder of the strange winter they shared. Show it to your children someday, Gabriel suggests. Tell them about the winter their father spent with wolves. They'll think I'm making it up, Reed says with a smile. Don't blame them. Wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't lived it. When the moment of parting finally arrives, their goodbye is brief, neither man comfortable with lengthy sentiment. Reed joins the eastward-bound company with a final wave, his figure growing smaller as the distance between them increases. Gabriel watches until Reed disappears from sight, feeling a curious mixture of emotions. Sadness at the parting, certainly, but also a deep-rooted contentment with his own path forward. The winter has changed him, revealed something essential about his place in the world. He breaks camp and begins his journey back, not to the old cabin, but to the valley Silver showed him. His possessions are few, his needs simple, his purpose clear. By summer's peak, he'll have a new cabin raised. By autumn, he'll be prepared for whatever winter brings next. As Gabriel crests the final ridge and looks down at the valley that will become his home, he spots movement, a grey shape moving along the stream bank. Silver patrolling his territory, perhaps watching for Gabriel's return. The wolf pauses, looking up at the ridge. Even at this distance, Gabriel feels the connection between them. Not tamed, not domesticated, but aligned in some fundamental way. Home, Gabriel says quietly to himself, the word feeling right in his mouth. He begins the descent into his valley, into his future, carrying with him the hard-won wisdom of a winter that nearly claimed him. The mountains have tested him, taught him, and finally accepted him, not as a conqueror, but as a part of their wild community. Behind him, winter's grip on the high country is already loosening. Ahead, a life awaits that few men would choose, but that feels perfectly suited to who Gabriel has become, a man who learned to survive not by fighting the wilderness, but by becoming part of it. And, as the stars appear above the surrounding peaks, Gabriel Blackwood, no longer just a mountain man, but something more complex and integrated, prepares for his first night in the valley the wolves chose for him. The mountains outside may seem harsh and unforgiving to most, but as you drift off to sleep in your warm, comfortable bed, remember that even in the most challenging environments, humans can find not just survival, but belonging, if they learn to listen to the wilderness instead of fighting against it.